Story 1. The Loop on Interstate 80. Marcus Chen had been driving cross-country routes for 17 years, and he prided himself on knowing every major highway system like the back of his weathered hands. His rig, a 2019 Kenworth T680, had logged over 800,000 miles under his careful maintenance. That October night in 2019, hauling electronics from Sacramento to Chicago, Marcus thought he knew exactly what to expect from Interstate 80 through Nevada. He had driven that stretch at least 200 times, always stopping at the same truck stops, always seeing the same landmarks. The monotony was comforting, predictable, but predictability has a way of dissolving when reality decides to break its own rules. The night started normally enough. Marcus left Sacramento at 8 p.m., right on schedule. His CB radio crackled with the usual chatter from other drivers, complaints about traffic in Reno, warnings about a speed trap near Sparks. The weather was clear, temperature a cool 52 degrees, perfect driving conditions. He had his thermos of black coffee, his playlist of 80s rock, and a full tank of diesel. Everything was routine. By 11 p.m., he was approaching a section of highway about 40 miles east of Winnemucca, a desolate stretch where civilization seemed to evaporate into the desert darkness. The road was empty except for his headlights cutting through the night. That's when Marcus noticed the mile marker, mile 229. He registered it absently, his mind half focused on the road, half on the Eagles' song playing through his speakers. 5 minutes passed, maybe 6. Then he saw another mile marker emerge from the darkness. Mile 229, the exact same number. Marcus blinked, thinking fatigue was playing tricks on him. He checked his dash clock, 11:17 p.m. He made a mental note and kept driving, watching more carefully now. The road stretched ahead, straight as an arrow, just as it always had. He passed a distinctive rock formation on the right side, a boulder that looked vaguely like a crouching bear. He had seen it 100 times before. 10 minutes later, the mile marker appeared again. Mile 229, and there on the right side of the road was the same bear-shaped boulder. Marcus felt his stomach tighten. This wasn't possible. He checked his GPS unit, a high-end Garmin he had installed just 3 months ago. According to the GPS, he was making steady progress eastward, currently at mile 237. But the physical markers told a different story. He pressed harder on the accelerator, pushing his speed up to 75 miles per hour. The rig responded smoothly, the engine humming with its familiar rhythm. He focused on the road, counting the minutes, watching for anything distinctive. 15 minutes of driving at 75 miles per hour should have taken him nearly 20 miles down the highway. When the next mile marker appeared, Marcus already knew what it would say. Mile 229. The bear-shaped boulder sat in its impossible position once again. His hands tightened on the steering wheel, knuckles going white. He grabbed his CB radio, pressing the transmit button with a trembling thumb. "Breaker, breaker, this is eastbound Eagle. Anyone on this channel?" Static answered him. He tried again, cycling through channels. Nothing but empty static on every frequency. He checked his cell phone. No signal, which wasn't unusual in this area, but the lack of any connection suddenly felt sinister. Marcus kept driving, his mind racing through logical explanations. Maybe he had dozed off, entered some kind of microsleep state and turned around without realizing it. But his GPS showed continuous eastward progress. Maybe the mile markers were wrong, some kind of maintenance error. But the GPS showed different numbers than what he was seeing. Maybe his GPS was malfunctioning. But everything else in the truck worked perfectly. The engine temperature was normal, the fuel gauge showed 3/4 of a tank, all systems nominal. Except he was trapped in an impossible loop, driving the same stretch of highway over and over again. He tried everything he could think of. He pulled over to the shoulder, put the rig in park, and stepped outside. The desert air was cold and still, absolutely silent except for the idle rumble of his engine. The stars overhead looked wrong somehow, too bright, arranged in patterns he didn't recognize. He walked to the back of his trailer, checking the doors, still sealed, cargo secure. He returned to the cab and tried driving in the opposite direction, heading west. 5 minutes later, the mile marker appeared ahead of him, mile 229. But now he was facing east again, somehow turned around without any memory of turning. Panic began to set in properly now, cold and sharp in his chest. Marcus had been in dangerous situations before: black ice spinouts, brake failures, close calls with drunk drivers. But those were problems he could understand, could react to. This was different. This violated every rule of reality he had ever known. He checked his watch. 1:30 a.m. He had been driving for over 2 hours since first noticing the repeated mile marker. By now, he should have been past Elko, maybe even approaching the Utah border. Instead, he was stuck in this impossible segment of highway, looping endlessly through the same stretch of Nevada desert. He tried varying his approach. He drove slowly, just 45 miles per hour, watching every detail of the landscape. The same scrub brush, the same fence posts, the same distant mountain silhouettes. He tried driving with his lights off, using just his running lights as if darkness might break whatever hold gripped him. He tried counting seconds out loud, trying to stay hyper-aware of his mental state. Nothing changed. Mile 229, the bear-shaped boulder. Mile 229, the bear-shaped boulder. Over and over, an infinite repetition that made no sense. Around 3 a.m., Marcus noticed something new. Or rather, he noticed the absence of something. He hadn't seen another vehicle in over 4 hours. Not a single car, not another truck, nothing. Interstate 80 through Nevada wasn't exactly Times Square, but it was a major transcontinental route. There should have been some traffic, even in the dead of night. The complete absence of other vehicles felt like confirmation that he had somehow slipped out of the normal world into something else, somewhere else. He tried to stay calm, to think rationally. He had food and water for several days. His fuel was the limiting factor. He calculated that he could keep driving for maybe 6 or 7 more hours before running dry. Then what? Walk. In which direction? The loop seemed to reset his position every few minutes regardless of which way he drove. Would walking be any different? He imagined himself stranded in the cab, the engine silent, waiting for dawn that might never come, trapped in an eternal night on this impossible stretch of road. At 4:15 a.m., something changed. Marcus was watching the mile markers obsessively now, and when mile 229 appeared again, there was something next to it. A figure standing on the shoulder of the road. Marcus slowed down, his heart hammering. As his headlights illuminated the figure, he saw it was a man in a trucker's jacket just standing there facing the road. Marcus pulled alongside, rolling down his window. "Hey, you need help," he called out. The figure didn't move, didn't respond. Marcus stared at the man's face and felt ice flood his veins. The man looked exactly like him. Same face, same build, same silver-gray hair. The figure turned its head slowly to look directly at Marcus, and its eyes were completely black. No whites, no pupils, just endless darkness. Marcus slammed on the accelerator, the rig lurching forward with a roar. He didn't look in his mirrors, didn't want to see if the figure was following or moving or still standing there with those impossible eyes. He drove hard, pushing the truck to its limits, praying for something, anything to change. And then, as suddenly as it had begun, the loop broke. He saw mile 230 flash past, then 231, then 232. His GPS beeped back to life, recalculating his position. His CB radio crackled with a sudden burst of voices, truckers chatting about weather conditions ahead. His cell phone vibrated with a flood of delayed messages. Marcus didn't stop driving until he reached Elko, pulling into the first truck stop he found as dawn was breaking over the desert. He checked his logs. According to his electronic logging device, He had been driving continuously for the correct amount of time, and it showed him as having traveled the correct distance. There was no record of the loop, no indication that anything unusual had happened. But his fuel tank was nearly empty, far more fuel consumed than the recorded distance should have required, and his odometer showed an extra 247 miles that couldn't be accounted for. Marcus finished his run to Chicago, delivered his cargo, and returned home to Sacramento. He still drives trucks, still takes cross-country routes, but he never drives Interstate 80 through Nevada anymore. He adds 6 hours to his trips by routing through Idaho instead, and he refuses to discuss why. Sometimes, late at night when he's on empty highways, he sees mile markers and has to check them twice, 3 times, to make sure they're progressing normally. And he never, ever drives past mile 229 if he can help it, because sometimes the road doesn't lead forward. Sometimes it leads nowhere at all, looping endlessly through a space that shouldn't exist, where time means nothing and reality bends in ways that human minds weren't meant to comprehend. Story 2. The Woman at Mile 156. Sarah Mitchell drove a dedicated route, the same path every week for the past 9 years. She hauled refrigerated goods from Portland, Maine to Boston, Massachusetts, a straight shot down Interstate 95. The route was so familiar she could navigate it in her sleep, which was dangerous thinking for any truck driver, but Sarah was disciplined. She had a spotless safety record, over 900,000 miles without a single accident, and she intended to keep it that way. Her 2018 Freightliner Cascadia was her pride and joy, perfectly maintained, always clean. She knew every rest stop, every grade, every curve of that highway. Until the night of March 14, 2021, when her familiar route introduced her to something that should not exist. The run started at 10 p.m., right on schedule. Sarah had done this exact trip 468 times by her count, every Tuesday and Friday without fail. The weather was typical for mid-March in New England, cold and damp with scattered rain, temperature hovering around 38 degrees. She wore her usual setup, heated seat on low, coffee in the cup holder, classic country station playing softly. The highway was moderately busy with typical late-night traffic, enough vehicles around that she never felt completely alone, but not so many as to be stressful. Professional drivers recognize the rhythm of night highways, the ebb and flow of traffic, the patterns of behavior from other vehicles. Sarah was attuned to these rhythms after nearly a decade. Around midnight, just south of Portsmouth, New Hampshire, Sarah noticed a woman standing on the shoulder near mile marker 156. The woman was waving her arms, clearly in distress. Sarah's headlights caught her clearly, a woman in her 30s, wearing a white summer dress completely inappropriate for the cold March night, no jacket, no shoes. Sarah immediately began slowing down, pulling onto the shoulder about 50 yards past the woman. She grabbed her CB radio. Breaker 19, this is North Star Refrigeration southbound at mile 156. I've got a woman on the shoulder who appears to need assistance. Any smokies in the area? She waited for a response, but only got static. She tried her cell phone instead, dialing 911. The dispatcher answered promptly. 911, what's your emergency? Sarah explained the situation, giving her precise location. The dispatcher sounded concerned. Ma'am, stay in your vehicle. We're sending a state trooper to your location. ETA approximately 10 minutes. Sarah kept her engine running, watching her mirrors. The woman hadn't moved from her position, still standing at mile 156, still waving. In the glow of Sarah's trailer lights, the woman looked pale, almost luminescent. After about 5 minutes, the woman began walking towards Sarah's truck. There was something wrong with her movement, Sarah realized. The woman's gait was too smooth, too gliding, as if her feet weren't quite touching the pavement. Sarah locked her doors, a cold feeling growing in her stomach. The woman reached the passenger side of the cab and looked up at Sarah with wide, desperate eyes. She mouthed words that Sarah couldn't hear through the glass. "Please help me. Please let me in." Sarah shook her head, pointing to her phone, trying to indicate that help was coming. The woman's expression didn't change. She kept mouthing the same words, "Please help me. Please let me in." Over and over with mechanical precision, her lips forming the same shapes in the exact same way each time. A state police cruiser pulled up behind Sarah's truck, lights flashing blue and red against the night. Sarah felt relief wash over her. The trooper, a middle-aged man with a calm, professional demeanor, approached her driver's side window. She rolled it down. "Evening, ma'am. Dispatcher said you called about a woman needing help." Sarah nodded eagerly, pointing toward her passenger side. "Yes, she's right there on the other side of my truck. White dress, no shoes. She seems confused or in shock." The trooper looked confused. He walked around Sarah's truck, his flashlight sweeping the area. Sarah watched in her passenger mirror as he circled the entire rig, checking the shoulder, looking under the trailer. He returned to her window, his expression troubled. "Ma'am, there's nobody there. Are you feeling all right? When's the last time you took a break?" Sarah stared at him in disbelief. "Officer, she was just there 30 seconds ago. She walked right up to my passenger door. White dress, dark hair, barefoot. She was asking me to let her in." The trooper's expression shifted to concern. "Ma'am, I need you to step out of the vehicle. I think you might need medical attention. Possible carbon monoxide exposure or—" Sarah cut him off. "I'm not imagining things. She was right there." But even as Sarah said it, she could see the trooper didn't believe her. He probably thought she was hallucinating from fatigue, maybe on drugs. She submitted to a field sobriety test, passed easily, blue zeros on the breathalyzer. The trooper checked her cab for carbon monoxide with a detector. Nothing. Finally, he let her go with a warning to take a break at the next rest stop if she felt tired. Sarah drove on, shaken and confused. She was absolutely certain about what she had seen. The woman was real, solid, undeniably present. But she had vanished without a trace in the time it took the trooper to walk around the truck. At the next rest stop, Sarah pulled in and walked around, trying to calm her nerves. She bought coffee from the vending machine and stood outside in the cold air, letting the chill clear her head. Maybe she had been more tired than she realized. Maybe the trooper was right. She finished her coffee and got back on the road, determined to complete her run. 40 minutes later, approaching the Massachusetts border, Sarah saw her again. Mile marker 156. The same woman in the same white dress standing in the exact same position, waving her arms in distress. Sarah's blood turned to ice. This wasn't possible. She had already passed mile 156, had driven almost 30 miles beyond it. She checked her GPS frantically. According to the GPS, she was at mile 122, approaching Newburyport. But the mile marker clearly read 156, and there was the woman waving frantically. Sarah kept driving, her hands shaking on the wheel. She didn't slow down, didn't pull over. As she passed the woman, their eyes met. The woman's expression changed, shifting from desperation to something else. Anger. Her mouth opened impossibly wide, wider than any human jaw should extend, and Sarah heard a scream even through her closed windows and over the sound of her engine. It was a sound of pure rage and frustration, inhuman and piercing. Sarah pressed harder on the accelerator, her heart pounding. She called 911 again. Different dispatcher this time. She reported seeing the same woman, explained she had already called about her 45 minutes ago. The dispatcher checked the records. "Ma'am, I see a call from your number at 12:17 a.m. about a woman at mile 156. The responding officer reported no one at the scene." "Are you certain you're seeing someone?" Sarah insisted she was. The dispatcher sounded skeptical but agreed to send another unit. Sarah didn't wait this time. She kept driving, watching her mirrors obsessively. 30 minutes later, near mile 92, according to her GPS, Sarah saw the mile marker ahead. Mile 156. Her stomach lurched. The woman stood in her position, waving. Sarah grabbed her CB radio, cycling through channels. "Breaker, breaker, this is North Star Refrigeration. Anyone else seeing a woman in a white dress at mile 156? Come back." Static. She tried again, more static. She kept driving, passing the woman for the third time. Again, that terrible scream of rage. The pattern continued for the next 4 hours. Every 30 to 40 minutes, regardless of what her GPS said, regardless of how far she had driven, mile 156 would appear again. The woman would be there, waving. Each time Sarah passed without stopping, the woman's reaction grew more violent. The fourth time, the woman ran after the truck at an impossible speed, keeping pace for nearly a quarter mile before falling away. The fifth time, she was standing in the middle of the lane, forcing Sarah to swerve around her. The sixth time, she was hanging on the passenger door, somehow clinging to the moving truck, her face pressed against the window, those desperate eyes boring into Sarah's. Sarah was crying now, terrified beyond reason. She tried everything she could think of. She pulled off at rest stops, waiting for 30 minutes before continuing, hoping to break whatever pattern had trapped her. When she got back on the highway, mile 156 appeared within minutes. She tried taking alternate routes, using surface roads. The woman appeared on those roads too, standing under streetlights, always in the same white dress, always at what her mind registered as mile 156 even when no mile markers existed. At 6:30 a.m., as dawn was breaking, Sarah saw the mile marker approach one more time. She was exhausted, mentally and physically shattered. This had to end. She pulled over, stopping right next to the woman. Their eyes met. Sarah rolled down her window. "What do you want?" she asked, her voice hoarse. The woman's expression softened. She leaned close to the window and whispered, "I just wanted someone to stop. I've been waiting so long for someone to stop." And then Sarah saw it. Behind the woman, partially hidden in the brush on the shoulder, was a white sedan, crumpled and rusted. The damage pattern suggested it had been there for years, not hours or days. Sarah's mind put the pieces together. The summer dress, the bare feet, the desperation. "You died here," Sarah whispered. "You had an accident and you died here and nobody stopped." The woman nodded slowly. Tears rolled down her pale cheeks. "March 14, 2014. 7 years ago tonight, I ran off the road in a storm. I waved for help. So many cars passed. Nobody stopped." Sarah felt tears on her own face. "I'm sorry," she said. "I'm so sorry nobody helped you." The woman reached through the open window, her hand ice cold, and touched Sarah's cheek gently. "Thank you for stopping now," she whispered. Then she faded, dissolving like morning mist, until nothing remained but empty air and the rusted car in the brush. The mile marker now read correctly, mile 94. Sarah's GPS showed the same number. Whatever loop she had been caught in had broken. Sarah reported the wrecked car to the police. They found it exactly where she described, a 2012 Honda Accord registered to Emma Westbrook, age 34, reported missing on March 14, 2014. Her body was found still in the driver's seat, where it had remained undiscovered for 7 years despite being less than 30 yards from a major interstate highway. The accident report theorized she had run off the road during a storm, struck her head, and wandered onto the highway in a state of confusion before succumbing to hypothermia. No witnesses had ever come forward. Sarah still drives her route between Portland and Boston. She still passes the spot where Emma Westbrook died. But now, whenever she sees someone on the shoulder who appears to need help, she always stops, always calls for assistance, always waits until proper help arrives. Because she learned that some debts span beyond life and death, that some loops can only be broken by simple acts of compassion, and that the highway holds more than just trucks and cars. It holds memories, regrets, and spirits still waiting for someone to care enough to stop. Story 3. The Maintenance Station. Gerald "Rusty" Thompson had spent 32 years on the road, driving everything from flatbeds to tankers across all 48 continental states. At 61 years old, he was thinking about retirement, maybe buying a small cabin in Montana where he could fish and forget about highway miles. But for now, he was still hauling freight. And on December 9th, 2018, he was driving a load of industrial machinery from Detroit to Denver. The route took him through the heart of the country, across the endless flatness of Kansas on Interstate 70. Rusty knew this stretch well. He had driven it at least 100 times over his career. He knew every town, every truck stop, every quirk of the road, which is why what happened that night shook him so deeply. Because familiar roads aren't supposed to reveal new secrets, especially secrets that defy everything you thought you knew about reality. The weather was brutal that December night. A winter storm had been forecasting for days, and Rusty was trying to beat it across Kansas before the highway shut down. The temperature had dropped to 11 degrees, and snow was just beginning to fall, small flakes that danced in his headlights like white static. It was 2 a.m., and he had been driving for 6 hours since his last mandatory break. He was tired but alert, experienced enough to know his limits. The highway was nearly empty, most sensible drivers having already called it a night. But Rusty wanted to make it to Salina before stopping, just another 80 miles. Around 2:45 a.m., about 40 miles west of Topeka, Rusty's check engine lights suddenly illuminated. His heart sank. The engine temperature was climbing rapidly, already in the red zone. He could hear a new sound from under the hood, a knocking that every experienced driver recognizes as serious trouble. He immediately began looking for a place to pull over, but this section of I-70 was particularly desolate, nothing but empty plains in every direction. The nearest town, according to his GPS, was still 15 miles away. The knocking grew louder, more insistent. His temperature gauge hit maximum. He had to stop right now or risk catastrophic engine failure. That's when he saw the sign, "Maintenance Station next right 2 miles." Rusty felt a flood of relief. Maintenance stations were scattered along major interstates, official Department of Transportation facilities where they stored equipment, salt, sand, and sometimes had mechanics on duty for highway emergencies. He had used them before in desperate situations. He took the exit, which curved away from the main highway into darkness. The road was paved but narrow, no streetlights, just his headlights cutting through the thickening snow. After about 2 miles, exactly as the sign had indicated, a large facility appeared ahead, surrounded by chain-link fencing with bright overhead lights illuminating a parking area. Rusty pulled into the lot, grateful to see the place was active despite the late hour. Several vehicles were parked in the lot, a few maintenance trucks, a salt spreader, and surprisingly, 3 other semi-trucks. The main building was a large metal structure, painted in the standard dot green and white colors. A sign over the door read, "Kansas Department of Transportation District 7 Maintenance Facility." Rusty shut down his engine, which gave one final violent knock before going silent. He grabbed his logbook and climbed down from the cab, the cold immediately biting through his jacket. The front door was unlocked. Rusty entered a waiting area that looked standard for this type of facility. Industrial tile floors, fluorescent lighting, a few plastic chairs, a coffee maker on a counter, notices and schedules pinned to a bulletin board. A man in a dot uniform sat behind a desk, reading a newspaper. He looked up when Rusty entered, smiling pleasantly. "Evening." "Well, morning technically." "Engine trouble," Rusty nodded, explaining the situation. The man nodded sympathetically. "Temperature sensor, probably." "We get a lot of that in this cold. I can have our mechanic take a look, but not until morning. We're pretty swamped tonight." Rusty glanced around, confused. "Swamped? I only saw a few vehicles outside." The man chuckled. "Oh, we've got drivers sleeping in the dormitory. We've had 12 trucks come through tonight with various issues. This storm is causing all sorts of problems. You're welcome to wait in here, or there's a bunk room if you want to rest. We'll have someone look at your rig first thing at 6 a.m. Rusty considered his options. He was tired, and sitting in this uncomfortable waiting room for 3 hours didn't appeal to him. "A bunk sounds good, actually. You really set up for that here," the man nodded, standing up. "Sure are. This facility is designated as an emergency shelter. We've got 20 bunks in the back for situations like this. Follow me." He led Rusty through a door and down a long hallway. The building seemed larger on the inside than it had appeared from outside, the hallway stretching much farther than the exterior dimensions should have allowed. Rusty noticed this but chalked it up to perspective tricks and his fatigue. The man opened a door to a large room filled with bunk beds, all made up with clean white sheets. The room was dimly lit by emergency lighting. Several of the bunks appeared occupied, dark forms of sleeping people visible under blankets. "Pick any empty bunk," the man said. "Coffee and breakfast at 6 in the dining area, 2 doors down from here. Bathroom is right across the hall." Rusty thanked him and chose a lower bunk near the door. He was exhausted enough that the hard mattress felt acceptable. He lay down without even taking off his boots, pulling a blanket over himself. Within minutes, he was drifting off to sleep, the warmth of the room and his exhaustion overwhelming any discomfort. Rusty woke abruptly to someone shaking his shoulder. He opened his eyes to see a woman in her 40s, wearing a truck driver's denim jacket, staring down at him with wide, frightened eyes. "Don't eat the food," she whispered urgently. "And don't tell them you're awake, just listen to me, we have to get out of here." Rusty sat up, confused and disoriented. The room was still dark, the other bunks still occupied. "What are you talking about? What time is it?" The woman put a finger to her lips, gesturing for him to be quiet. "It's 9 a.m., she whispered. "I know that doesn't make sense, but you need to trust me. This place isn't what you think it is." Rusty checked his watch. It read 5:47 a.m. He showed it to the woman, but she shook her head. "Your watch is wrong, so is your phone. They do something to time here. I've been here for 3 days, or maybe 3 hours. I can't tell anymore, but other people have been here longer, much longer." Rusty felt a chill run down his spine. "What are you talking about? This is a dot maintenance facility." The woman's laugh was bitter and quiet. "Look at the people in these bunks. Really look at them." Rusty stood up, moving to the nearest occupied bunk. He looked at the person sleeping there, a man in a flannel shirt. The man's face was wrong somehow, too still, like a wax figure. Rusty reached out tentatively and touched the man's shoulder. It was cold and hard, not warm and yielding like living flesh. He jerked his hand back. The woman whispered, "They're not sleeping. They're not alive. I don't know what they are. Maybe they were people once, but now they're just props, decorations to make this place seem normal." Rusty moved quickly to the next bunk, then the next. The woman was right. Every sleeping person was cold and stiff, more like mannequins than humans, but disturbingly realistic. His heart began to race. "We need to leave right now." The woman nodded. "I tried yesterday. The front door won't open. The windows are fake, just painted glass that won't break. I've tried every exit I can find. They all loop back to the same rooms. But there are only 2 of us awake now. Earlier there were 6. They took the others during the last maintenance shift." "Took them where?" Rusty demanded. The woman's eyes filled with tears. "Down the hallway to the workshop. I heard sounds, terrible sounds, and then nothing. The people who go down there don't come back. Instead, new sleeping people appear in these bunks, wearing the exact same clothes the missing people were wearing." Rusty felt his skin crawl. He looked around the dormitory with new eyes, seeing it now as something predatory, something that mimicked safety while concealing horror. A bell rang somewhere in the building, echoing through the walls. The woman grabbed Rusty's arm. "That's the breakfast bell. They'll expect us in the dining area. If we don't show up, they'll come looking, but if we do show up..." She didn't finish the sentence. Rusty made a decision. "Show me every exit you've tried. There has to be a way out." They moved quietly through the building, checking doors the woman had already tested. She was right. Every exit led back to interior rooms in impossible ways. The front door was locked from the inside with no visible mechanism, the handle turning freely but the door remaining sealed. The windows, when Rusty punched one with his full strength, didn't even vibrate. They seemed to be solid walls with window images painted on them. They heard footsteps in the hallway, measured and deliberate. The dot worker's voice called out cheerfully, "Breakfast is ready, friends. Come to the dining area." Rusty and the woman ducked into a supply closet, hiding behind shelves stocked with cleaning supplies. The footsteps passed by, then stopped. "I know you're awake," the voice said, no longer cheerful. It was flat now, mechanical. "You shouldn't be awake. The others aren't awake. Why are you awake? This creates complications." The footsteps continued down the hall, then faded. Rusty examined the supply closet desperately. His hand brushed against a ventilation grate near the floor. He knelt down, examining it. The grate was secured with screws, but they were Phillips head standard screws. He pulled out his multi-tool, a Leatherman he always carried, and began unscrewing them. The woman watched the door, terrified. It took 3 agonizing minutes to remove all 4 screws. The grate came free, revealing a metal ductwork shaft about 2 feet square. It wasn't large, but it was big enough to crawl through. "You first," Rusty whispered. The woman didn't argue, squeezing into the duct and crawling forward. Rusty followed, replacing the grate behind him as best he could without the screws, hoping to buy them time. The duct was cramped and cold, but it was a way forward. They crawled in darkness, feeling their way. The duct branched multiple times, and they chose directions randomly, just trying to put distance between themselves and the dormitory. After what felt like an eternity but was probably 10 minutes, Rusty saw light ahead. The duct opened into a large room. They emerged carefully, finding themselves in some kind of workshop. But this wasn't any normal workshop. The space was filled with partially assembled human figures, like the mannequins in the bunks, but in various stages of completion. Some were just metal skeletons. Others had synthetic flesh applied in patches. Worktables held organs that looked disturbingly real, though they were clearly artificial. In the center of the room stood something that made Rusty's mind rebel. It was a human shape, but it was wrong in every way. Its proportions were slightly off, its movements jerky and insect-like, its face a mask that didn't quite fit over whatever was underneath. The thing turned to look at them, and Rusty saw that its eyes were just black holes in the mask, infinitely deep. It spoke, and its voice was the composite of a dozen different voices layered together. Guests should not be in this area. Guests should be resting. Guests should be becoming part of the facility. Why do you resist the comfort we provide? Rusty grabbed the woman's hand and ran. They bolted for the only door they could see, bursting through it into another hallway. Behind them, they heard movement, multiple things giving chase. They ran blindly through the twisting corridors of the facility, which seemed to reconfigure itself as they moved, hallways extending and contracting, doors appearing and disappearing. The pursuing sounds grew louder, a clicking, scuttling noise like enormous insects. Rusty's lungs burned, his 61-year-old body not built for this kind of exertion. They turned a corner and found themselves facing the entrance waiting room. The front door stood ahead, still sealed. But next to the coffee maker, Rusty saw a fire extinguisher mounted on the wall. He grabbed it, reversed his grip, and swung it at the front door's window with all his strength. The glass finally shattered, not into normal shards but into fragments that dissolved into gray dust before hitting the floor. Beyond the broken window was not the parking lot they expected, but darkness. Pure, absolute darkness that seemed to pull at them. The scuttling sounds were right behind them now. Rusty made a choice. He grabbed the woman and jumped through the broken window into the darkness. They fell for a moment that stretched impossibly long, then hit cold pavement hard. Rusty looked up, gasping for breath. They were on the shoulder of Interstate 70, 40 miles west of Topeka, exactly where Rusty's truck had broken down. But the maintenance facility was gone. No exit ramp, no road leading away from the highway, no building. Just empty plains stretching to the horizon under the pre-dawn sky. The woman was lying next to him, breathing heavily, staring at the sky. "We got out," she whispered. "We actually got out." Rusty's truck was sitting on the shoulder exactly where he had left it. He turned the key and the engine started immediately, purring smoothly with no sign of the knocking or overheating. His temperature gauge read normal. His check engine light was off. According to his dashboard clock, it was 2:47 a.m., only 2 minutes after his check engine light had first come on. His logbook showed continuous driving, no stop recorded. The woman, whose name was Linda Kowalski, had been reported missing 3 days earlier when she failed to arrive at her delivery destination. Her truck was found abandoned on I-70 near this same location. No sign of Linda anywhere. She had no memory of how she had gotten to the facility or how long she had actually been there. Her watch, her phone, all her electronic devices showed different times, none of them matching reality. The authorities found no record of any DOT maintenance facility in this area. The nearest one was 60 miles away. Rusty and Linda both left trucking after that night. Rusty moved to his cabin in Montana 2 months later, retiring early despite the financial hit. Linda sold her truck and got a job in an office, never driving professionally again. They stay in touch, calling each other every few weeks, each one needing confirmation from the other that what they experienced was real. Because sometimes highways don't just connect places. Sometimes they connect to places that shouldn't exist, facilities that simulate safety while concealing something inhuman and incomprehensible, traps designed to catch the weary and the lost. And once you've been to a place like that, once you've seen behind the mask of ordinary reality, you never drive the same way again. Every maintenance station becomes suspect. Every unexpected facility fills you with dread. And you always keep driving, no matter what signs promise comfort ahead. Story 4. The Convoy. Daniel Rodriguez had been solo driving for 15 years, preferring the solitude of the open road to the complications of team driving or company fleets. At 38, he was in his prime as a trucker, fit, sharp, and confident. He drove a 2020 Peterbilt 579, his own truck purchased after years of saving, painted a deep metallic blue that he kept meticulously clean. On May 23, 2022, he was hauling automotive parts from Atlanta to Dallas, a route he had driven dozens of times. The trip was routine, uneventful through Alabama and Mississippi. But when he crossed into Louisiana on Interstate 20 around midnight, his routine trip transformed into an encounter with something that defied every logical explanation he had ever relied on. The night was warm and humid, typical for late May in Louisiana. Daniel had all his windows up, air conditioning running at a comfortable 68 degrees. His CB radio played with the usual mix of chatter and static, truckers sharing information about traffic, road conditions, speed traps. Around 1:15 a.m., somewhere between Monroe and Shreveport, Daniel noticed headlights in his mirrors. A convoy of trucks was coming up behind him, moving fast. This wasn't unusual by itself. Convoys were common, companies running multiple trucks together for efficiency, or independent drivers traveling together for companionship and safety. But as the convoy got closer, Daniel started noticing strange details. All the trucks were identical, old Kenworth W900s in perfect condition, classic long-nose models from the 1980s. They were pristine chrome gleaming under his taillights, no dirt, no road grime, looking like they had just rolled out of a showroom. Daniel counted 7 of them, all maintaining perfect spacing, all moving at exactly the same speed. They began to overtake him, pulling into the left lane. As the first truck passed, Daniel looked over to get a glimpse of the driver, the way truckers often do, a nod of acknowledgement between professionals. The cab was empty, no driver visible, just darkness behind the windshield. Daniel blinked, thinking maybe it was just the angle, the reflection of lights creating an illusion. The second truck passed, also empty. Then the third, fourth, fifth. All identical, all pristine, all without any visible driver. The sixth truck pulled alongside Daniel's cab and stayed there, matching his speed exactly at 68 miles per hour. Daniel looked over directly at the driver's seat. He could see the interior clearly. The seat was there. The steering wheel was turning to maintain lane position, but there was nobody in the cab. Absolutely nobody. Daniel felt his pulse quicken. He grabbed his CB radio. "Breaker, breaker. Anyone seeing this convoy of old Kenworths on I-20 westbound?" "They don't appear to have drivers. Anyone else seeing this?" Static answered him. He tried different channels, more static. No human voices, no response. The truck alongside him maintained its position, perfectly matching his speed. Daniel tried slowing down to 60. The convoy slowed with him. He sped up to 75. They accelerated smoothly, maintaining their formation around him. He was boxed in now, one truck ahead, one behind, one on his left, the others staggered in formation. Daniel's mind raced through possibilities. Autonomous trucks. He had heard about those, experimental self-driving vehicles being tested by various companies. But nothing this advanced, not classic 1980s trucks retrofitted with technology that perfect. And why would they be running in the middle of the night on a Louisiana highway without any markings, without any safety vehicles, without any indication they were test models? It didn't make sense. He tried to raise someone on his CB again, any voice at all. Nothing. He checked his cell phone. No signal, which was odd. This section of I-20 usually had decent coverage. The convoy maintained their formation around him for 10 minutes, 15, 20. Daniel's unease grew into genuine fear. He couldn't speed up enough to break away, couldn't slow down enough to fall behind their formation. They had him contained. The highway ahead was empty. No other vehicles in sight, no cars, no trucks, nothing but him and the convoy. Even the usual interstate traffic had vanished. They were alone on the road, or rather, Daniel was alone with 7 ghost trucks that shouldn't exist. At 1:47 a.m., the convoy's CB radio crackled to life. But the sound coming through wasn't human speech. It was something else, a series of tones and pulses that reminded Daniel of old modem sounds from the 1990s, digital information being transmitted in audio form. The pattern was complex, rhythmic, almost musical. It lasted for about 30 seconds, then stopped. Daniel stared at his CB radio, his skin crawling. Then the transmission came again, the same pattern of tones, like a message repeating. The truck alongside Daniel's cab suddenly turned its headlights off and on 3 times, as if signaling. Then it pulled ahead slightly, opening a gap in the formation. The message seemed clear: "Follow us." Daniel had a choice. He could refuse, could try to slam on his brakes and pull off the highway. But something told him that wouldn't work, that these trucks had boxed him in for a reason and weren't going to let him leave until they were finished with him. Against every survival instinct screaming in his brain, Daniel maintained his position, following the convoy. The lead truck took an exit Daniel had never noticed before. There was no sign indicating the exit number or destination, just a plain off-ramp curving into darkness. The entire convoy took the exit in perfect formation, and Daniel, surrounded on all sides, had no choice but to follow. The ramp led to a 2-lane road cutting through dense forest. No streetlights, no houses, no indication of civilization. They drove for miles through the darkness, the convoy maintaining their formation, Daniel imprisoned in the center. After about 20 minutes, the forest opened up to reveal a massive truck stop complex that Daniel had never seen before, despite having driven this route many times. The place was huge, easily 50 acres, with rows of fuel pumps, a large main building, and a parking area filled with trucks. Old trucks. Dozens, maybe hundreds of them, all classic models from the 70s and 80s, all in perfect condition. The convoy pulled into the complex, rolling to a stop in a designated area. Then simultaneously, all 7 trucks shut down their engines. Daniel sat in his cab, engine still running, trying to decide what to do. His CB radio crackled again, but this time it was a human voice, or something mimicking a human voice. The tone was flat, emotionless. "Driver, exit your vehicle. You have been selected. This is necessary. Do not resist." Daniel's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Every fiber of his being said to run, to put his truck in gear and blast out of this place as fast as he could. But he was surrounded by hundreds of trucks, parked so close together that navigating out would be impossible. The voice came again. "Driver, this is the final request. Exit your vehicle. Refusal will result in extraction." Daniel didn't know what extraction meant, but it sounded bad. He made a decision. He grabbed his phone, even though it had no signal, and set it to record video. He put it in his shirt pocket, camera facing out, hoping to document whatever was about to happen. Then he opened his door and climbed down from his cab. The truck stop was silent. Absolutely silent. No wind, no insects, no ambient noise at all. The air felt wrong, too still, too heavy. The hundreds of parked trucks sat empty and dark. The main building ahead showed lights in the windows, but Daniel couldn't see any movement inside. He walked toward it, his footsteps echoing unnaturally loud on the pavement. The door opened before he reached it, swinging inward smoothly. Daniel stepped inside. The interior looked like a normal truck stop. Convenience store, restaurant area, showers, a driver's lounge with old furniture and a TV. But everything was slightly wrong. The products on the store shelves were brands he didn't recognize, with labels in English but advertising products that didn't exist. The TV in the lounge was on, showing a news broadcast, but the anchors' faces were wrong, their features slightly misaligned, their speech just a fraction of a second out of sync with their lip movements. And there was nobody there. No staff, no other drivers, nobody. Daniel Rodriguez. The voice came from speakers in the ceiling, that same flat, emotionless tone. "You have been selected for evaluation. Your psychological profile indicates acceptable parameters. You will be offered a choice." Daniel turned in a circle, looking for any sign of who or what was speaking. "A choice for what? What is this place? Who are you?" "This facility is a way station. We are the network. We maintain the infrastructure. You have been identified as a candidate for integration. This is not a hostile action. This is an opportunity." Daniel's mind reeled. "Integration into what? I don't understand what you're talking about." The voice continued, ignoring his questions. "The fleet requires operators. Human consciousness provides necessary elements that artificial systems cannot replicate. Intuition, creativity, adaptive problem solving. You will retain your identity while becoming part of a greater purpose." Daniel shook his head. "I'm not becoming part of anything. I just want to leave, finish my run to Dallas, and go home." There was a pause, as if the voice was processing his response. "Your refusal is noted and respected. However, you have seen the facility. You have knowledge of the network. This creates complications. We offer an alternative. You may leave, and your memories of this encounter will be suppressed. You will remember only a normal journey, a routine delivery. Or you may accept integration, retaining full memory and gaining new capabilities." "Suppressed? You mean erased?" Daniel demanded. "I don't want you messing with my memories. I don't want to be integrated. I just want to leave exactly as I am." Another pause. "That option creates unacceptable variables. Human psychological studies indicate you will attempt to report this experience. Investigations will follow. The network will be exposed. This cannot be permitted. Choose integration with memory or departure with suppression." Daniel felt trapped, caught between two impossible choices. Let them alter his mind or become part of whatever this network was. He thought frantically, trying to find a third option. His hand moved to his shirt pocket, to the phone recording this entire conversation. "What if I promise not to report this? What if I just keep it to myself and you let me go with my memories intact? Human promises are statistically unreliable. Your psychological profile suggests 94% probability of disclosure within 1 week, 99.8% probability within 1 month. Unacceptable risk." Daniel pulled out his phone, holding it up so the camera could see the empty store, the wrong products, the impossible TV. "I'm recording this. I'm documenting everything. If you mess with my memories, this video will still exist. If I disappear, my company will investigate. Either way, your network gets exposed. So here's my counteroffer. You let me leave right now with my memories and my recording, and I'll keep this to myself. But if you try anything, if you harm me or alter me in any way, this goes public." There was a long silence. The TV in the lounge shut off. The lights flickered. Daniel held his breath, certain he had just made a fatal mistake. Then the voice spoke again, and for the first time there was something like emotion in it, something like respect. "Your tactical response demonstrates the adaptability we seek in candidates. Your proposal is acceptable, with modifications. You will keep your memories and your recording, but the recording will not function outside your personal storage. Any attempt to upload, share, or publicize it will result in automatic file corruption. You may keep it as personal documentation, but it cannot be weaponized against the network. Do you accept these terms?" Daniel thought carefully. It wasn't perfect, but it was better than the alternatives. "I accept. I keep my memories. I keep the recording for personal proof that I'm not crazy, but I don't try to expose you. And you leave me alone. Don't mess with my mind. Don't try to integrate me." "Deal," the voice responded immediately. "Agreement confirmed. Exit through the front door. Your vehicle will be returned to Interstate 20 westbound. This encounter is concluded. Safe travels, Daniel Rodriguez." Daniel didn't wait to see if they would change their mind. He turned and walked quickly toward the exit. As he pushed through the door, there was a moment of disorientation, a feeling like stepping through a waterfall. Then he was sitting in his truck, hands on the steering wheel, engine running smoothly. He was on the shoulder of Interstate 20 westbound, exactly where he had been when the convoy first appeared. His clock showed 1:19 a.m. Only 4 minutes had passed since he first noticed the headlights in his mirrors, but his shirt pocket felt heavy. He pulled out his phone. The video was there, 97 minutes of footage showing everything. The empty convoy trucks, the mysterious truck stop, the conversation with the disembodied voice. He watched a few minutes of it, confirming it was real, that he hadn't imagined it. Then he put the phone away and got back on the road. He drove straight through to Dallas, completed his delivery, and returned home to Atlanta. He never told anyone about the encounter. He tried once to upload the video to a backup drive, but the file corrupted exactly as promised, becoming an unreadable mass of digital garbage. Daniel still has the video on his phone. He watches it sometimes late at night when he needs to confirm to himself that it really happened. He still drives trucks, still makes regular runs across the country, but he's more aware now, more observant. He notices things other drivers miss: convoys that move too perfectly, trucks that appear too pristine, exit ramps that seem to appear and disappear. And sometimes, late at night on empty highways, his CB radio will crackle with those strange digital tones, that pattern of pulses that sound like a language he doesn't speak but somehow understands. A reminder that he was offered a choice, and he made his decision, and the network has kept its promise to leave him alone. But also a reminder that the highways contain more than human drivers, that there are systems and intelligences moving through the night on their own incomprehensible journeys, and that sometimes humans are offered glimpses of a larger reality that most people never know exists. Story 5. The HITCHHIKER on Route 50. Maria Santos had been driving long-haul routes for 6 years, ever since her husband passed away, and she needed to support her 2 teenagers alone. At 43, she was tough, practical, and not easily frightened. She had seen plenty of strange things on the road, dealt with aggressive drivers, bad weather, mechanical failures, and the occasional drunk trying to climb into her rig at truck stops. She carried pepper spray and a tire iron within easy reach, and she had never hesitated to use her CB radio to call for help when situations turned dangerous. But on August 17, 2020, driving across Nevada on the loneliest road in America, Maria encountered something that her practical mind couldn't explain away, something that showed her that the universe held horrors beyond aggressive drunks and bad weather. Route 50 across Nevada is officially nicknamed the loneliest road in America, a designation the State Tourism Board embraced with dark humor. It's 287 miles of mostly empty highway cutting through high desert and mountain ranges, connecting small towns separated by vast stretches of nothing. Maria had driven it several times, hauling goods between Salt Lake City and Sacramento. She actually enjoyed the solitude of it, the sense of being alone with her thoughts and the landscape. On this particular night, she was eastbound, approaching the roughly midpoint of the Nevada section around 3 a.m. The moon was nearly full, casting silver light across the desert landscape. Visibility was excellent, the road stretching ahead like a black ribbon across pale earth. Maria hadn't seen another vehicle in over an hour. Her CB radio was quiet, no traffic, no chatter. Just the hum of her engine, the whisper of tires on pavement, and classic rock playing softly from her speakers. It was peaceful, meditative. Then her headlights illuminated a figure standing on the shoulder of the road ahead. Maria's first thought was concern. Anyone on foot in this environment, especially in the middle of the night, was in serious danger. The nearest town was 40 miles behind her, and temperatures dropped dramatically in the desert at night despite the summer season. She began slowing down, activating her hazard lights. As she got closer, she could see the figure more clearly. It was a young man, early 20s maybe, wearing jeans and a light jacket, his thumb out in the universal hitchhiker gesture. He looked remarkably clean and fresh for someone stranded in the desert. Maria pulled onto the shoulder about 20 yards past the man, leaving her engine running and her doors locked while she assessed the situation. Through her passenger side mirror, she watched the man walk toward her truck. His gait was normal, casual, not the stumbling shuffle of someone dehydrated or injured. He reached her passenger door and looked up at her through the window, smiling pleasantly. He was handsome in a generic way, with sandy blonde hair and an even symmetrical face. But something about him felt off to Maria, though she couldn't immediately identify what. She cracked the window just an inch. "You okay? What are you doing out here?" The man's smile widened. "Car broke down about 5 miles back. I've been walking for over an hour. Any chance you could give me a lift to the next town? I'd really appreciate it." His voice was pleasant, educated, without any regional accent. Maria hesitated. Company policy and common sense both said never pick up hitchhikers, but leaving someone stranded in the desert felt wrong, potentially fatal for the person. She made a decision. "There's a truck stop in Eureka about 60 miles ahead. I can take you that far and you can get help there, but I'm going to pat you down first and you sit where I can see you at all times." "Understood," the man nodded agreeably. "Of course, I appreciate your caution. These are strange times." Maria unlocked the passenger door and stepped out, holding her pepper spray visibly in her hand. The man submitted to a quick pat down without complaint. He had no weapons, no bag, nothing in his pockets except a wallet. Maria gestured for him to climb into the passenger seat. He did so smoothly, settling in and buckling his seatbelt. Maria returned to the driver's side, noting that the temperature inside the cab had dropped noticeably in the few minutes the door had been open. She cranked up the heat a bit and pulled back onto the highway. "Thank you so much," the man said. "I'm David, by the way." Maria nodded but didn't offer her own name, keeping her attention on the road. "What happened to your car?" David shrugged. "Just died. No warning, no sputtering, just stopped running. I tried calling for help but no cell signal out here. Figured my best bet was to walk until someone came along." Maria glanced at him. 5 miles is a long walk in the dark. "Surprised you made it that far without getting picked up sooner." "I'm lucky you came along," David said. "This road is pretty empty at night." They drove in silence for a few minutes. Maria kept stealing glances at David, trying to figure out what was bothering her about him. Then she realized he hadn't broken a sweat. It was August. The temperature during the day would have been over 95 degrees, and even though it was cooler now, it wasn't exactly cold. After walking 5 miles in the desert, he should have been sweating, breathing hard, showing some sign of exertion. But he looked completely comfortable, as if he had just stepped out of an air-conditioned building. "You feeling okay?" Maria asked. "Need some water?" David turned to look at her, and in the dim light of the cab, his eyes caught her headlights' reflection in a way that made them seem to glow slightly. "I'm fine, thank you. Very considerate of you to ask." His tone was pleasant, but there was something mechanical about it, like a customer service representative following a script. Maria's unease grew. She checked her CB radio. Still quiet, she tried calling out. "Breaker 19, this is West Coast Maria eastbound on Route 50 near mile marker 98. Anyone on this channel?" Static answered. She tried her cell phone. No signal, which was normal for this area. "Your radio won't work," David said casually. Maria's hands tightened on the wheel. "Why not?" David smiled, that pleasant, generic smile again. "Because we're not exactly where you think we are." Maria felt a chill run down her spine. "What does that mean?" David turned in his seat to face her more fully. "You picked me up. That was kind of you, but it was also a mistake because I'm not what you think I am, and this isn't exactly Route 50 anymore." Maria glanced out her windows. The landscape looked the same, high desert stretching away under moonlight. But now that David had mentioned it, something was wrong. The road was too straight, no curves at all, just a perfectly linear strip extending to the horizon. And the mile markers, when they passed one, said mile 98. Then a minute later, another marker appeared, mile 98. Then again, mile 98. They were in a loop, just like the trucker on Interstate 80. "What do you want?" Maria demanded, trying to keep her voice steady. David tilted his head, studying her. "I want to understand. That's all I've ever wanted. You see, I was human once, or I think I was. The memories are unclear, but something happened to me on this road, something that changed me. And now I'm stuck here in this space between places. I can't leave. I've tried, but I can interact with people who pass through. People who make the mistake of stopping, of trying to help." Maria's mind raced. Her pepper spray was in the center console within reach. Her tire iron was behind the seat. But David hadn't made any threatening moves. He just sat there looking at her with those slightly too reflective eyes. "I don't want any trouble," Maria said carefully. "I was just trying to help you. If you want me to let you out, I'll pull over right now." David shook his head. "You don't understand. I'm not in your truck. Not really. I'm just a projection, an echo. The real me, or what's left of the real me, is somewhere else, somewhere in this loop. I use the projection to interact, to talk to people, to remember what it was like to be human. But the problem is, everyone who stops for me gets trapped here too. It's not intentional. I don't want to trap people, but the loop expands to include anyone who interacts with me." Maria felt panic rising in her chest. "How do I get out? There has to be a way out." David looked genuinely sad. "I've talked to 17 people over the years. Well, I think it's years. Time is strange here. 13 of them never found a way out. They're still here, driving in circles, their trucks running on impossible fuel, their bodies sustained by nothing. 4 of them did escape. I've tried to understand what they did differently." "What did they do?" Maria asked urgently. David leaned back in his seat, his form becoming slightly translucent. "They rejected me. Not just asked me to leave, but fully, completely rejected my existence. Refused to believe in me, refused to engage with the reality I represented. It's like their disbelief broke the connection, pushed them back into the real Route 50. But it's hard to disbelieve in something sitting right next to you, talking to you." Maria understood what she had to do. It went against everything her rational mind told her, but rationality had stopped applying the moment she picked up David. She looked straight ahead at the road, focusing on the white lines, the asphalt, the normal physical reality of driving. "You're not real," she said firmly. "You're not sitting next to me. This isn't happening. I'm driving Route 50 east toward Eureka. It's 3:15 a.m. on August 17, 2020. I'm alone in my truck like I've been for the past 2 hours. There is no passenger. There is no loop. I am real, David said, his voice becoming distorted, layered with static. I'm sitting right here. You can see me. You can hear me. You picked me up. Maria kept her eyes forward, refusing to look at him. No, I didn't. There was no one on the road. I've been driving alone. I'm tired, maybe seeing things that aren't there. My mind playing tricks, but there is no passenger. I am alone. The temperature in the cab plummeted, frost forming on the inside of the windows. David's voice became a chorus of overlapping tones. Look at me. Acknowledge me. I need to be real. I need someone to confirm that I exist. Maria gritted her teeth, her breath coming out in visible puffs of vapor. You don't exist. You're a ghost, a trick of the light, a hallucination. I don't believe in you. I refuse to believe in you. I am alone in my truck on Route 50. There was a sound like breaking glass, a sensation of something tearing apart. Maria felt a wave of vertigo, her vision blurring. Then everything snapped back into focus. The temperature in the cab returned to normal. The passenger seat was empty. The road ahead curved naturally, following the terrain. A mile marker passed, mile 103. Then, a minute later, mile 104. The loop was broken. Her CB radio crackled to life with a trucker chatting about fuel prices. Her cell phone beeped with a notification as it picked up a weak signal. Maria pulled over, hands shaking, needing to stop and process what had just happened. She sat on the shoulder for 10 minutes, breathing deeply, checking and rechecking that the passenger seat was empty. Eventually, she got back on the road, driving carefully, constantly monitoring the mile markers to confirm they were progressing normally. She made it to Eureka without further incident, pulled into the truck stop, and sat in the parking lot until sunrise, too shaken to continue driving in the dark. She filed a report with the Nevada Highway Patrol, describing a possible stranded motorist on Route 50 around mile 98. They investigated and found nothing. No abandoned car, no sign of anyone on foot. Maria didn't push it. She knew what she had experienced, and she knew how crazy it would sound if she explained it fully. She continued driving long-haul routes for another 2 years, but she never took Route 50 through Nevada again. She added 8 hours to her Sacramento runs by routing through Reno instead, and she refused to explain to her dispatchers why she wouldn't take the direct route. And she never, ever picked up hitchhikers again, no matter how dangerous their situation appeared, no matter how guilty she felt about driving past them. Because she learned that some people standing on roadsides aren't people at all, that some requests for help are traps set by things that exist in the margins of reality, echoes and projections of tragedies long past, looking for company in their eternal isolation. And the only way to escape them is to deny their existence so completely that even your compassion can't create a bridge for them to cross. Maria carries that knowledge with her every mile she drives, a weight heavier than any cargo, a reminder that the loneliest road in America is lonely for reasons that go far beyond simple geography. Story 6. The Way Station. Thomas Brennan drove for a major national carrier, hauling refrigerated goods up and down the East Coast for the past 12 years. At 49, he was methodical, rule-following, and took pride in his perfect compliance record. He never skipped way stations, never falsified logs, never cut corners on safety. His 2017 Volvo VNL was always immaculate, his paperwork always in order. On November 3, 2019, hauling frozen foods from Boston to Miami, Thomas approached a way station on Interstate 95 in South Carolina around 2 a.m. It was a routine stop, something he had done thousands of times. But this particular way station was different. This one measured more than just the weight of cargo and compliance with regulations. This one measured something else entirely, something that had nothing to do with commercial vehicle standards and everything to do with forces that exist outside normal human understanding. The night was foggy, a thick mist rolling in from the coastal wetlands that made visibility poor despite his LED headlights. Traffic was light, just a few cars and the occasional truck passing in the opposite direction. Thomas saw the way station signs. All trucks must enter when light is green. The signal light was green, which was unusual for this time of night. Most way stations closed after midnight, operating only during business hours unless they were running special enforcement operations. But the green light was clear, and Thomas was legally obligated to comply. He put on his turn signal and took the exit ramp, rolling slowly toward the inspection area. The way station facility looked standard. A large scale built into the roadway, a small office building with windows overlooking the scale, LED signs displaying instructions to drivers. But something felt off immediately. The lights were all functioning, but the quality of the illumination was wrong, slightly too blue, casting strange shadows. The fog seemed thicker here, swirling in patterns that didn't match the gentle breeze. Thomas rolled onto the scale and put his truck in park, waiting for instructions. The LED sign usually displayed messages like proceed or pull to right for inspection. Instead, it showed a single word. Wait. Thomas waited. 1 minute passed, then 5, then 10. The sign continued to display wait. Thomas checked his mirrors. No other trucks had entered the way station behind him. He appeared to be completely alone. He reached for his logbook, preparing to document the delay when the LED sign changed. But instead of displaying a normal message, it showed numbers. 7294. Thomas stared at the number, confused. Was that his weight in pounds? It didn't make sense. His truck fully loaded should weigh around 70,000 pounds, not 7,000. Was it tons? That was too heavy. What was this number measuring? The office building door opened, and a figure in what appeared to be a DOT enforcement uniform walked out, approaching Thomas's driver's side. Thomas rolled down his window as the man approached. The officer was middle-aged with a neat uniform and a clipboard, looking entirely professional. "Evening," the officer said, his voice pleasant but flat. "We need you to step out for a weight verification. There's a discrepancy in your reading." Thomas complied immediately, climbing down from his cab with his paperwork folder. The officer gestured toward the office building. "This way, please." Thomas followed, his boots crunching on gravel that seemed too loud in the foggy silence. They entered the building, which appeared normal at first glance. A waiting area with plastic chairs, a counter with computers and printers, posters on the walls showing weight regulations and safety information. But as Thomas looked more closely, the posters were wrong. The text was gibberish, random letters arranged in blocks that looked like words from a distance but meant nothing up close. The officer gestured to a chair. "Have a seat. This will just take a few minutes." Thomas sat, gripping his paperwork folder nervously. The officer moved behind the counter, typing on a computer. The keyboard clicks sounded wrong, too hollow, echoing strangely in the small space. "Your vehicle registration shows a standard weight class," the officer said, reading from his screen. "But our scale is registering a different measurement. We need to verify what you're carrying." "It's frozen foods," Thomas said, opening his folder and pulling out his bill of lading. "Frozen vegetables, packaged meals, ice cream, standard refrigerated cargo, everything's documented here." He held out the paperwork, but the officer didn't take it. Instead, the officer looked at Thomas with an expression that might have been curiosity or might have been something else entirely. "We're not measuring the cargo," the officer said quietly. "We're measuring you." Thomas felt a chill run through him. "I don't understand. Measuring me? For what?" The officer leaned forward, his eyes reflecting the fluorescent lights in a way that seemed wrong, too bright, like animal eyes caught in headlights. "This is a weigh station, Mr. Brennan. We measure weight, but not the physical weight of trucks and cargo. We measure the other kind of weight. The weight people carry with them. The weight of choices, actions, debts unpaid, promises broken. Your number is 7,294. That's quite high. Thomas stood up abruptly, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. This is insane. I don't know what kind of joke this is, but I'm leaving. The officer didn't move, didn't try to stop him. You can't leave until you're cleared. Those are the regulations. Every driver who enters must be processed. You know that. Your rule-following Thomas Brennan, spotless record, 12 years without a violation. You would never break protocol. Thomas's mind reeled. How did this officer know his full name? He hadn't shown his license yet, hadn't provided identification. I want to speak to your supervisor. This is completely inappropriate. The officer smiled, and the smile was completely wrong, too wide, showing too many teeth. I am the supervisor. I am the station manager. I am the scale operator. I am everyone here, and you need to be processed. Thomas turned and ran for the door, but when he grabbed the handle, it wouldn't turn. The door was sealed somehow, no lock visible but completely immovable. He pounded on the glass. Let me out. This is illegal. You can't hold me here. The officer stood up slowly from behind the counter. Your weight is 7,294. Do you want to know what that measures? The number of small cruelties, the casual unkindnesses, the times you saw someone who needed help and drove past because it wasn't your problem. The times you cut someone off in traffic because you were in a hurry. The times you were harsh to people who annoyed you. Each one measured, each one recorded, adding to your total weight. Thomas shook his head in denial. That's ridiculous. Everyone makes mistakes. Everyone has bad moments. You can't hold people accountable for every minor thing. The officer tilted his head. Can't we? This is the weigh station at the end of all roads. Eventually, every driver passes through here. And every driver must be weighed, must be measured. Most people carry weight they never acknowledge, never confront. We make it visible. We make it real. Thomas's panic shifted to something deeper, a creeping horror that he was dealing with something far beyond a crazy officer. What happens now? What are you going to do to me? The officer consulted his clipboard, flipping through pages that seemed to multiply as he turned them. 7,294 is high, but not exceptionally so. The average is around 6,000. You're above average in accumulated minor cruelties, which is concerning but not unprecedented. The protocol for your level is remediation. Remediation, Thomas whispered. What does that mean? The officer pointed to a door Thomas hadn't noticed before, set into the wall behind the counter. Through there, you'll experience a period of understanding. You'll feel what you've caused others to feel. Every casual cruelty, every unkind word, every moment of callousness. You'll experience it from the other side. The duration depends on your number. For 7,294, approximately 7 hours. When you emerge, your weight will be reduced to 0 and you'll be free to continue your journey. Thomas stared at the door, fear coursing through him. And if I refuse? The officer's smile faded. Then you remain here indefinitely. The weight must be addressed. You can carry it through remediation, experiencing and releasing it, or you can carry it forever, trapped in the station, unable to move forward. Those are the only options. Thomas thought desperately, trying to find a way out, a logical escape from this impossible situation. But the door behind him remained sealed, and the officer stood patiently waiting, as if he had infinite time. Finally, Thomas made his choice. If I go through there, you promise I can leave afterward. I can go back to my truck and continue my route, the officer nodded. Yes, that is the protocol, remediation then release. We have no interest in keeping people here permanently. We simply require acknowledgement and processing. Thomas walked slowly toward the door behind the counter. Every instinct screamed at him not to go through, but he saw no alternative. The officer opened the door, revealing darkness beyond, absolute and complete. 7 hours, the officer said. Remember, it will feel longer, but it is only 7 hours. Thomas stepped through into the darkness. What happened next was beyond Thomas's ability to articulate afterward. He experienced himself as other people, feeling their emotions, their pain, their frustration. He was the waitress he had berated for slow service, feeling her exhaustion after a 14-hour shift, her worry about her sick child, his words cutting into her like knives. He was the driver he had cut off in traffic, feeling the shock and fear, the spiking adrenaline, the terror of near accident. He was the dispatcher he had spoken to rudely, feeling the weight of an impossible job, being screamed at by drivers all day, his casual cruelty just one more in an endless series. Over and over, thousands of moments, each one sharp and painful and undeniable. The experience was comprehensive and devastating. Thomas felt every moment of pain he had ever casually inflicted, not out of malice but out of indifference, stress, or simply not caring enough to be kind. The weight of it was crushing, unbearable. He wanted to scream, to apologize, to take it all back, but he couldn't. He could only experience it, feel it, carry it until it was done. When Thomas finally stumbled back out through the door, he collapsed on the floor of the way station office, sobbing uncontrollably. The officer stood over him, his expression neutral. "Your weight is now 0. You are cleared to proceed. Your vehicle is on the scale, ready to continue. Drive safely, Mr. Brennan." Thomas got to his feet shakily, his body feeling like it had aged decades. He looked at the clock on the wall. 7 hours had passed exactly, just as the officer had said. It was 9 a.m. Daylight showed through the windows, though the fog remained thick outside. Thomas walked out of the office building on trembling legs. His truck sat on the scale exactly as he had left it, engine still running, everything normal. He climbed into the cab and drove off the scale, following the exit ramp back to the interstate. The lead sign as he left displayed a new message: "Cleared, safe travels." Within minutes of rejoining I-95, the fog lifted, revealing normal morning traffic, other trucks, cars, the regular flow of the highway. His CB radio crackled with normal chatter. His cell phone showed full signal. Thomas pulled into the first rest stop he found and sat in the parking lot for an hour, trying to process what had happened. He checked his logbook. 7 hours of detention time was recorded at the way station, but the location was listed correctly, a real way station in South Carolina that he had passed through dozens of times before. He searched online for information about unusual incidents at that way station. Nothing. He called the South Carolina DOT to ask about their enforcement procedures. Everything they described was normal, standard protocol, nothing like what he had experienced. Thomas completed his delivery to Miami, then requested a week off for personal reasons. He drove home to Pennsylvania and spent days thinking about his experience. The memories of the remediation remained vivid, painful. He could still feel every moment of pain he had caused others. It changed him fundamentally. He became patient, kind, conscious of every interaction. He started thanking people, really thanking them for their service, their work, their presence. He let drivers merge in traffic. He tipped generously. He spoke gently to dispatchers even when they delivered frustrating news. Other drivers noticed the change. "What happened to you?" his regular co-drivers asked. "You're different, calmer." Thomas never explained. How could he? Who would believe that there were way stations on highways that measured not cargo but character, that processed not paperwork but souls? He simply smiled and said he had decided to be more conscious about his impact on other people. Thomas still drives, still hauls freight up and down the East Coast. He passes through the South Carolina way station on I-95 regularly. It always looks normal now, operating during standard hours, with friendly professional DOT officers conducting routine inspections. He's been through it dozens of times since that November night, and nothing unusual has ever happened again. But every time he drives through, he checks the LED sign as he exits, part of him expecting to see a number. So far, it always shows the standard message: "Thank you, drive safely." He measures his own weight now, his own accumulated actions, trying to keep his total low, trying to ensure that if he ever passes through that other way station again, the one that exists between the normal world and something else. His number will be smaller. Because he learned that everything we do carries weight, that our actions have measurements we never see, and that somewhere on the highways that connect everywhere to everywhere else, there are stations that make those measurements visible. And once you've been weighed and found wanting, once you've experienced the full weight of your own casual cruelties, you never quite see the world the same way again. Story 7. The Exit to ASHFIELD. Jennifer Wu had been driving dedicated pharmaceutical routes for 8 years, specializing in time-sensitive medical deliveries that required precision and reliability. At 35, she was one of the most trusted drivers in her company's fleet, handling medications worth millions of dollars and responsible for deliveries that sometimes meant the difference between life and death for patients. Her 2021 Kenworth T880 was equipped with top-tier refrigeration and GPS tracking systems. She took her responsibilities seriously, had never missed a delivery window, never lost a shipment. On January 12, 2023, driving from Chicago to Memphis with a load of critical immunosuppressant drugs for transplant patients, Jennifer's perfect record faced an impossible test when she took an exit that shouldn't exist to a town that was never built. The route was straightforward: Interstate 57 south through Illinois into Missouri, connecting to I-55 toward Memphis. Jennifer had driven it at least 50 times. The weather was clear, cold but dry, temperature around 22 degrees. Perfect winter driving conditions. She left Chicago at 6 p.m., planning to arrive in Memphis by 4 a.m. with her time-critical cargo. Everything was routine until about 10:30 p.m., when she was approaching the Missouri border, roughly following the Mississippi River through the dark Illinois farmland. Her GPS suddenly announced a route recalculation. Take exit 18B toward Ashfield for a faster route. Jennifer frowned. She didn't remember an exit 18B, and she had never heard of Ashfield. She glanced at her GPS screen, which showed a small town off the highway, and a route that would save approximately 45 minutes by cutting across country roads to rejoin I-55 further south. Saving 45 minutes on a time-critical pharmaceutical delivery was significant, but Jennifer was cautious. She had learned to distrust GPS routes that seemed too good to be true. She grabbed her road atlas, a physical book she always kept in the cab despite having multiple digital navigation systems. Truckers old enough to remember pre-GPS driving had taught her that paper maps never failed, never lost signal, never glitched. She checked the atlas carefully. There was no exit 18B marked. There was no town called Ashfield in this area. Her atlas showed exit 17 and exit 19, but nothing in between. Yet her GPS, a high-end Garmin system that had never failed her before, insisted. Exit 18B in 1 mile. Turn right toward Ashfield. Jennifer decided to trust her atlas. She ignored the GPS instruction, staying on I-57, but 30 seconds later the GPS recalculated again. Exit 18B in 1 mile. Turn right toward Ashfield. The voice was more insistent this time, almost urgent. Jennifer looked at the highway ahead and felt her stomach drop. There, illuminated in her headlights, was a green highway sign. Exit 18B Ashfield 1 mile. She blinked hard, thinking fatigue was causing her to hallucinate. But the sign was real, solid, properly illuminated with the standard reflective material used on all interstate signs. She grabbed her CB radio. Breaker 19, this is Midwest Medical southbound on I-57 at mile marker 17. Anyone familiar with exit 18B to Ashfield? Come back. Static. She tried again on different channels. No response. She checked her cell phone for signal. Full bars. She quickly Googled Ashfield, Illinois. No results. She tried Ashfield, Missouri. Nothing. No town by that name existed in either state, at least not according to the internet. The exit ramp appeared ahead, curving off to the right. Jennifer had a decision to make in seconds. stay on the interstate, which was her normal protocol, or take the exit that promised to save 45 minutes on a critical delivery. She thought about the transplant patients waiting for these drugs, about the narrow window for effective immunosuppressant treatment. 45 minutes could genuinely matter. Against her better judgment, influenced by her dedication to her job and the pressure of the time-sensitive cargo, Jennifer activated her turn signal and took exit 18B. The ramp descended into darkness, curving away from the interstate's lights. Jennifer's headlights cut through the blackness, illuminating a two-lane road that appeared well-maintained, with fresh paint and clear road markings. A sign indicated, "Ashfield 8 miles." The landscape was typical Illinois farmland, flat and empty, with the occasional dark shape of a barn or farmhouse in the distance. Jennifer's GPS showed her new route clearly, a direct path through Ashfield that would reconnect with I-55 about 60 miles south, cutting off a big eastern loop of the interstate. She drove cautiously, maintaining 45 miles per hour on the unfamiliar road. The minutes ticked by. After about 8 miles, exactly as the sign had indicated, lights appeared ahead. A small town, maybe 24 buildings straddling the road. A green sign announced, "Welcome to Ashfield, Illinois. Population 847. Founded 1952. Jennifer felt some relief. The town existed after all. Maybe it was just too small to appear on her atlas or in Google searches. Rural Illinois had hundreds of tiny communities that barely registered in digital databases. But as she drove into the town, relief transformed into unease. The buildings were there, solid and real. A small main street with a diner, a gas station, a post office, a general store, all in that timeless small-town American style that could be from any decade between 1950 and 2000. But there were no people, no cars parked on the street, no lights in the windows despite it being only 10:45 p.m., early enough that at least some residents should be awake. The streetlights were on, illuminating empty sidewalks. The town was utterly deserted. Jennifer drove slowly through the main street, her unease growing with every empty building she passed. The diner's sign said, "Open 24 hours," but the interior was dark. The gas station's pump stood ready, but no attendant was visible. The post office had mail visible through the window slot, but no movement inside. It was like a movie set, a perfect recreation of a small town, but without any actual inhabitants. At the far end of the main street, another sign indicated the continuation of the route. I-55 south 16 miles. Jennifer accelerated, eager to get through this empty town and back to the safety of the interstate. But as she passed the last building, her truck suddenly lost power. The engine didn't die, didn't sputter or show any warning signs. It simply stopped pulling as if she had shifted into neutral. Her speedometer dropped rapidly. 40, 30, 20, 10, 0. She coasted to a stop right at the town limit where the streetlights ended and darkness resumed. Jennifer tried to accelerate. The engine revved normally, but the truck didn't move. She checked her transmission indicator. It showed drive. She shifted to park, then back to drive. Nothing. The truck sat still as if locked in place. She put on her hazard lights and sat for a moment, thinking through the situation. This wasn't a mechanical failure. The engine was running perfectly. The transmission seemed to be engaging, but some force was preventing the truck from moving forward. She grabbed her CB radio. "Emergency, emergency, this is Midwest Medical. I'm broken down in Ashfield, Illinois. Need assistance immediately." "Anyone copy?" Static answered. She tried her cell phone. Still showed signal, but when she tried to dial 911, the call wouldn't connect. Just a spinning indicator, then call failed. She tried her company's emergency dispatch number. Same result. She tried texting her dispatcher. The message showed sending but never completed. A sound from outside made Jennifer jump. Footsteps. Someone was walking on the pavement outside her truck. She looked out her driver's window and saw a figure approaching, an older man in a thick winter coat and a knit cap. He waved at her in a friendly manner. Jennifer cracked her window just an inch. "Hello, I'm having truck trouble. Is there a mechanic in town? Cell service isn't working." The man smiled, his face weathered and kind. "Welcome to Ashfield. We don't get many visitors anymore. Most people don't even know we exist." His voice was warm, grandfatherly. "Your truck is fine, it just can't leave right now. That's the nature of Ashfield. Things come in but have trouble leaving. But don't worry, we're friendly folk. You're welcome to stay the night, and maybe in the morning things will be different." Jennifer felt ice in her veins. "What do you mean my truck can't leave?" "That doesn't make any sense. Is there some kind of barrier on the road?" The man shook his head gently. "Not a physical barrier, no. More of a boundary. Ashfield exists in a special place, you might say. We're here, but we're also not quite here. It's hard to explain. Most people who find us are looking for us in some way, even if they don't realize it. You took the exit after all. Nobody takes the exit unless something calls to them." "I took the exit because my GPS suggested it and I'm on a time-critical delivery," Jennifer said, her voice rising with fear and frustration. "I have patients depending on this medication. I need to continue my route immediately. Please, if there's some kind of barrier or gate or anything blocking the road, remove it now." The man's expression grew sad. "I'm sorry, I truly am, but that's not how it works. Ashfield doesn't trap people permanently, but it holds them for a while. A night, maybe two. Until they understand something they need to understand, then they can leave." Jennifer shook her head in denial. "This is insane, I'm calling the police." She tried her cell phone again with the same result. The man watched patiently. "Communication doesn't work from inside Ashfield. We're isolated, that's part of what we are. I know this is frightening. I was frightened too when I first arrived here. That was in 1978. I thought I'd be leaving the next day. But I understood eventually that I was meant to stay. Most visitors do leave, though. You'll probably leave. You seem like someone who has things to do in the outside world." 1978, Jennifer whispered. "You've been here for 45 years. The man nodded. "Time is strange here. It feels like decades to me, but also like no time at all. When I go look in a mirror, I see a man who should be 93 years old, but I feel the same as I did when I was 48. Ashfield preserves things, keeps them in a state between moving forward and standing still." He gestured toward the dark town behind him. "The others here, all 847 of us according to the sign, were all people who found the exit at one time or another. Some of us were meant to stay. Some were just passing through. You're probably passing through." Jennifer's mind raced. She had to think rationally, had to find a solution. "You said people leave when they understand something. Understand what?" Man shrugged. "It's different for everyone. Some people need to understand that their priorities are wrong, that they're sacrificing important things for their careers or their ambitions. Some need to understand that they're running from something they should face. Some just need to rest, to stop for a moment in lives that have been moving too fast. Ashfield is a mirror. It shows people what they need to see." Jennifer thought about her life. 8 years of non-stop driving, of prioritizing deliveries over everything else. She had missed her sister's wedding because of a shipment. She had ended a relationship because her partner couldn't handle her being gone 3 weeks out of every month. She hadn't visited her parents in over a year. Her entire identity was wrapped up in being reliable, being the driver who never failed, never missed a delivery. Was that what Ashfield wanted her to see? That she had sacrificed too much for her job? "I understand," Jennifer said to the man. "I understand that I've been neglecting my personal life. I've been putting work above relationships. I get it. Now can I leave?" The man smiled sadly. "Understanding intellectually isn't the same as understanding deeply. Ashfield requires the deeper kind, but you're thinking in the right direction. My advice is to get some rest. The diner serves food, though we don't use money here. The hotel has rooms. Sleep, think, and see how you feel in the morning." Most people who try to force their way out just end up exhausted and still stuck. The ones who accept where they are and think about why, those are the ones who leave. He walked away, disappearing into the darkness beyond the streetlights. Jennifer sat in her truck trying to decide what to do. She attempted to drive again. Still no movement despite the engine running perfectly. She tried backing up. The truck moved in reverse without any problem. But the moment she shifted back to drive and tried to go forward, it was like hitting an invisible wall. Finally, Jennifer shut down the truck and climbed out. The cold air bit at her face, but the town itself was oddly quiet, none of the wind she would expect in the open Illinois farmland. She walked back toward the main street, her breath visible in the air. The diner's lights flickered on as she approached, as if sensing her presence. Through the window, she could see a figure moving inside, preparing food. When she opened the door, warm air and the smell of coffee greeted her. A woman behind the counter, maybe 60 years old, smiled warmly. "Welcome, you must be tonight's visitor. Have a seat, I'll get you something to eat." Jennifer sat at the counter, feeling surreal. "How many visitors come through here?" The woman poured coffee without asking if Jennifer wanted any. "Oh, varies. Some months we get 2 or 3. Sometimes 6 months pass with nobody. Time doesn't run quite right here, so it's hard to measure. But you're the first one this winter, I think, or maybe the third, hard to remember." Jennifer wrapped her hands around the coffee mug, seeking warmth and normalcy. "The man outside said everyone here took the exit at some point, that you're all stuck here." The woman nodded, sliding a plate of eggs and toast across the counter. "Stuck isn't quite the right word. Held, maybe. Kept. We took the exit because something in us responded to whatever ASHFIELD is. Most of us were running from something or towards something, moving so fast we couldn't see what really mattered. ASHFIELD stops that movement, makes us look at ourselves. Some of us needed that stop permanently. Some just needed it briefly." "I need to leave," Jennifer said, urgency in her voice. "I have medications in my truck that patients are depending on. People might die if I don't deliver them on time." The woman's expression was sympathetic but firm. "That urgency, that feeling that everything depends on you, that's probably why you're here. ASHFIELD doesn't usually take people randomly. It takes people who need to learn that they're not as indispensable as they think, that the world continues even when they stop moving for a moment." Jennifer wanted to argue, but she was exhausted, frightened, and somewhere deep inside, she recognized the truth in the woman's words. She ate the food mechanically, then accepted directions to the hotel 2 buildings down. The hotel room was simple but clean, and despite everything, Jennifer fell asleep quickly, her body demanding rest after the emotional trauma of the evening. She woke to sunlight streaming through the window. Her phone showed 7:15 a.m., meaning she was now over 3 hours late for her delivery window. But her phone also showed something else. 17 missed calls from her dispatcher, 23 text messages, and 3 voicemails, all of which had apparently come through in the few minutes since she woke up. Her phone had signal again. She called her dispatcher immediately. "Jennifer, thank God, where are you? We've been trying to reach you since midnight." The dispatcher sounded frantic. Jennifer explained she had experienced truck trouble in a small town called ASHFIELD. "I'm sorry, the delivery is blown. I know this is a critical shipment. I've failed." The dispatcher was silent for a moment, then said something that made Jennifer's world tilt. "Jennifer, we rerouted the shipment at 11 p.m. last night when you didn't respond to our calls. We sent another driver from our Springfield facility. The medications were delivered on time. The patients are fine, but we need to know you're okay. What happened?" Jennifer felt something crack inside her, a shell of urgency and indispensability that she had built around herself for 8 years. The delivery had been completed without her. The patients were fine. She hadn't been indispensable after all. Tears rolled down her face as she realized what ASHFIELD had shown her. Her entire identity was built on being the one person who could do the job, who never failed. But the truth was, systems existed beyond her. Other drivers could cover. The world continued even when she stopped. "I'm okay," she said quietly. "I'll be back on the road in an hour. I need to think about some things when I get back, though, about my priorities." She ended the call and walked outside. The town looked different in daylight, more real, less like a movie set. A few people were visible now, walking on the sidewalks, going about their business. The old man from last night waved to her from across the street. Jennifer walked to her truck. She climbed into the cab, turned the key, and shifted into drive. The truck moved forward smoothly, no resistance at all. She drove through Ashfield and continued on the road that led back to I-55. Within 20 minutes, she was on the interstate, heading south as if nothing had happened. She checked her GPS. It showed her route normally, with no mention of exit 18B or Ashfield. She checked her road atlas when she stopped for fuel. No exit 18B existed. She searched online for Ashfield, Illinois. No results, just like before. Jennifer completed her return trip to Chicago and put in her 2 weeks' notice the following day. She had saved enough over 8 years of non-stop work to take time off, to reconnect with family, to figure out what she wanted her life to be beyond endless deliveries and the pressure of time-critical shipments. She visited her parents, apologized to her sister for missing the wedding, reconnected with old friends. After 2 months, she went back to trucking, but on her terms. Regional routes, home every weekend, reasonable schedules that allowed for a life outside the truck. She drives past the area where exit 18B should be several times a year on various routes. It's never there, just the normal progression of exit 17 to exit 19. But sometimes, late at night when she's driving empty highways alone, she thinks about Ashfield and the 847 people living there in their town that exists between moments, holding people who move too fast and teaching them that stopping isn't the same as failing. And she's grateful for her night there, for the lesson taught in that impossible place, and for the reminder that she's not the axis on which the world turns, just one driver among thousands, doing her best but not carrying the weight of everything on her shoulders alone. Story 8. The Duplicate. Raymond Foster had been a long-haul owner-operator for 23 years, driving his customized 2016 Freightliner Coronado across all 48 states and 3 Canadian provinces. At 52, he was a legend among independent truckers, known for his distinctive black and orange truck, his collection of vintage CB radios mounted in his cab, and his encyclopedic knowledge of highways and back roads. His CB handle was Night Rider, and his voice was recognized by thousands of drivers across North America. On September 7, 2021, driving west on Interstate 80 through Wyoming, Raymond encountered something that shook his understanding of reality. Himself. Not a reflection or a case of mistaken identity, but himself driving his own truck, moving through the same space but somehow separate, a duplication that defied the fundamental rules of existence. The night started normally. Raymond was hauling construction equipment from Ohio to Sacramento, a straight shot across I-80 that he had driven hundreds of times. The Wyoming section, especially the stretch between Laramie and Rawlins, was one of his favorites. High desert, big sky, relatively light traffic at night. Around 11 p.m., the highway was nearly empty, just Raymond and the occasional vehicle passing in the opposite direction. Weather was perfect, clear and cool, stars brilliant in the unpolluted darkness. His favorite CB radio, a vintage Cobra 29 LTD from 1975, was tuned to channel 19, the standard trucker's channel with the usual mix of scattered chatter. Around 11:30 p.m., a voice came over the CB that made Raymond freeze. It was his voice. Not similar, not reminiscent. Identical. The voice said, "Breaker 19, this is Night Rider westbound on I-80 at mile 235, looking for information on road conditions ahead toward Rawlins." Raymond stared at his CB in shock. That was his handle, his voice, his exact phrasing. He keyed his microphone. This is Night Rider. Who is this on my handle?" There was a pause, then the voice responded, sounding equally confused. "This is Night Rider." Raymond Foster, owner-operator, westbound on I-80. Who's using my handle? Raymond felt a chill run down his spine. This is Raymond Foster, night rider. I don't know what's going on, but you need to pick a different handle. This is mine. The voice responded sharply. I've been using this handle for 23 years. You're the one who needs to explain yourself. Raymond checked his mirrors, half expecting to see another truck behind him with his distinctive paint scheme. But the highway behind him was empty, just darkness and the glow of his taillights. He looked ahead. Nothing but empty road stretching into the darkness. What mile marker are you at? Raymond asked, his voice tight with tension. Just past 237, the duplicate voice responded. Raymond checked his dashboard GPS. He was at mile marker 241, so the other voice was about 4 miles behind him, heading in the same direction. Describe your truck, Raymond demanded. There was a pause then. 2016 Freightliner Coronado, custom paint, black with orange flames, chrome stacks, triple antenna setup on the roof. What's your point? Raymond felt his heart hammering. That was exactly his truck, every detail correct. License plate? Raymond asked. The voice recited a number. It was Raymond's plate number, registered in his name to his home address in Pennsylvania. This wasn't possible. Someone was messing with him, maybe another driver who knew him, playing an elaborate practical joke. But the voice was too perfect, the details too exact. Raymond keyed his microphone again. Okay, you've had your fun. I don't know how you're doing this, but you need to stop. You're freaking me out. The voice responded, and now it sounded frightened too. I'm not doing anything. I don't know who you are or how you have my information, but this isn't funny. Identify yourself properly or I'm calling the highway patrol. Raymond tried a different approach. What are you hauling? The voice answered. Construction equipment, excavator components from Cleveland to Sacramento. Bill of lading number 447,892B. What are you hauling? Raymond pulled his paperwork. The bill of lading number matched exactly. Same cargo, same origin, same destination. Impossible. Absolutely impossible. I'm going to pull over, Raymond said. You pull over too, we'll figure this out. He started slowing down, looking for a place to pull onto the shoulder, but the voice responded. I just pulled over at mile 239. I'm waiting. Where are you? Raymond checked his GPS. He was at mile 243 now, still moving. I haven't pulled over yet, Raymond said. I'm still driving. How can you have pulled over if you're 4 miles behind me? The voice was silent for a long moment. Then, I'm standing outside my truck right now. I'm looking at I-80 westbound. There are no other vehicles in sight. Where exactly are you? Raymond pulled over onto the shoulder, put his truck in park, and climbed out. He looked back down the highway. He could see a few miles behind him, the road straight across the flat Wyoming landscape. There were headlights in the distance, a vehicle coming up behind him, maybe 5 miles back. Nothing stopped on the shoulder between him and those distant headlights. I'm outside my truck now too, Raymond said into his handheld CB radio. I'm at mile marker 243. I can see headlights behind me, maybe 5 miles back, but I don't see any truck stopped on the shoulder. Are your hazard lights on? The voice answered. Yes, hazards are on. 4 ways flashing. I'm at mile 239. You should be able to see me if you're at 243. I'm only 4 miles ahead of you. Raymond shook his head, though the other person couldn't see it. You said you're behind me at 239. I'm ahead of you at 243, 4 miles ahead, not behind. There was another long pause. When the voice spoke again, it was quiet, frightened. I said I'm at 239. You're at 243. That means you're ahead of me, 4 miles ahead, but I can't see you. I should see your lights. I should see your truck stopped on the shoulder, but there's nothing, just empty highway. Raymond tried to process this. If the other truck was at 239 and he was at 243, then yes, he was ahead, 4 miles ahead. The other truck should be behind him. But the voice kept saying Raymond was ahead of him, as if from the other truck's perspective, the mile markers were reversed. What direction are you traveling? Raymond asked carefully. "West," the voice answered immediately. "Westbound on I-80 toward Rawlins." Raymond felt a creeping horror. Same direction, same highway, but somehow they couldn't see each other and their relative positions made no sense. "I'm going to drive forward," Raymond said. "I'm going to head west toward mile marker 250. You do the same. We'll see if we can spot each other." Raymond climbed back into his truck and pulled onto the highway, accelerating to 65 miles per hour. He watched his mile markers: 244, 245, 246. The voice came over the CB. "I'm moving too. I just passed mile 240. I'm at 241 now." Still 4 miles apart, the gap maintaining itself despite both trucks moving at the same speed in the same direction. But that wasn't the strangest part. Raymond glanced in his passenger side mirror and saw something that made his blood run cold. There was a truck next to him, pacing him in the right lane. A black and orange Freightliner Coronado with chrome stacks and triple antennas. His truck, exactly his truck. Raymond grabbed his CB. "Are you in the right lane right now?" the voice responded. "No, I'm in the left lane." "Why?" Raymond stared at the truck pacing him. It was in the right lane, just slightly behind his driver's door, maintaining perfect pace. He slowed down. The duplicate truck slowed with him. He sped up. It matched his speed exactly, but the voice said it was in the left lane. Raymond looked left. The left lane was empty. "I can see a truck next to me," Raymond said, his voice shaking. "Black and orange Freightliner, exactly like mine, but you said you're in the left lane. This truck is in the right lane." The voice responded, equally shaken. "I can see a truck next to me too, in the left lane, same as mine, same colors, same everything. Are you in the left lane?" Raymond shook his head, realized the gesture was meaningless, and keyed his mic. "No, I'm in the right lane. I'm seeing you in the right lane next to me, but you're seeing me in the left lane. We're looking at each other, but from different perspectives somehow." Raymond tried to look at the driver of the duplicate truck, but the cab interior was dark, no details visible, just a shadowy figure behind the wheel. He flashed his headlights. The duplicate truck flashed its lights in the exact same pattern, but with a delay of maybe half a second, as if mimicking him. The CB crackled. "Did you just flash your lights?" Raymond confirmed he had. The voice continued. "The truck next to me flashed its lights at the same time, but it wasn't responding to my flash. It flashed first, then I did, like I was copying it." Raymond's mind struggled to make sense of this. They were somehow seeing each other, but from reversed perspectives, with each one perceiving themselves as the original and the other as the duplicate. It was like looking at a mirror, but the mirror image was solid, real, existing in the same space, but somehow separate. "What if we're in different timelines?" Raymond said suddenly. "What if something happened, some kind of split, and there are now 2 versions of this highway, 2 versions of us, existing in parallel?" The voice was silent for a long moment then. "That's insane. That's not possible." But even as the words came through, Raymond could hear the uncertainty, the fear that maybe it was possible, that maybe they had stumbled into something beyond normal physics. The duplicate truck continued to pace him, maintaining its position. Raymond tried something. He grabbed a piece of paper and wrote in large letters, "Can you see this?" He held it up to his passenger window, toward the duplicate truck. The CB crackled. "I'm holding up a sign that says, 'Can you see this? Can you see it?'" Raymond looked at the duplicate truck. He couldn't see any sign, couldn't see any details through the dark windows. "No," he admitted. "I can't see inside your cab. Can you see my sign?" the voice said. "No, I can't see anything inside your truck either. Just the exterior, solid, but somehow not quite real, like it's a projection or a hologram." They drove in silence for several minutes, the duplicate trucks maintaining their parallel positions. Finally, Raymond said, "We need to test something. I'm going to take the next exit. You stay on the highway. Let's see if we can break this connection." The voice agreed. Exit 214 was coming up, the Rawlins exit. Raymond put on his turn signal and moved toward the exit ramp. The duplicate truck stayed in the right lane, not following him. Raymond felt a moment of relief as he took the exit, curving away from the highway. But as his truck descended the ramp, he glanced in his mirror and saw the duplicate truck was still there, still next to him, despite being on an exit ramp that should only accommodate one vehicle in one lane. The duplicate was somehow existing in the same space, overlapping but separate. The CB crackled. "You didn't take the exit. You're still on the highway next to me." Raymond's hands tightened on the wheel. "I did take the exit. I'm on the ramp right now heading into Rawlins, but I can still see you next to me." The voice sounded panicked now. "This doesn't make sense. How can we both be in different places but still see each other?" Raymond didn't have an answer. He continued down the ramp into Rawlins, pulling into a truck stop parking lot. He parked his truck and shut down the engine. Through his windows, he could see the normal truck stop, building, fuel pumps, other parked trucks. But in his passenger side mirror, the duplicate truck was still there, parked in a space that didn't exist in the real lot, overlapping with a completely different truck that was actually occupying that spot. "I'm parked at the Rawlins truck stop," Raymond said into his CB. "Where are you?" the voice responded. "I'm still on I-80. I didn't take the exit. I'm passing Rawlins now, heading toward Rock Springs. But I can still see your truck next to me like you're still on the highway." Raymond looked at his mirrors. The duplicate was fading, becoming translucent. Within a few minutes, it vanished entirely, leaving just the normal truck stop around him. "It's gone," Raymond said. "I can't see you anymore." The voice responded. "Same here, you just faded away, like you were never there." Raymond sat in his truck for a long time, trying to process what had happened. He felt fundamentally shaken, his understanding of reality compromised. He checked his paperwork, his logs, his GPS history. Everything showed normal progression, proper stops, standard route. No indication of anything unusual except for a 45-minute period where his GPS signal had been erratic, showing his location jumping between different points on I-80. He tried calling the other version of himself on the CB for the next hour, but got no response. Just normal CB chatter from other drivers, none of whom had heard the previous conversation or had any idea what Raymond was talking about when he asked if anyone else had heard Two Night Riders on Channel 19. Eventually, Raymond got back on the highway and continued his journey to Sacramento. He delivered his cargo without further incident and returned home to Pennsylvania. But the experience changed him. He started researching quantum physics, parallel universes, the many worlds interpretation. He found theories that matched what he had experienced. The idea that reality splits at certain decision points, creating parallel versions that exist simultaneously. He wondered if taking exit 18B hours earlier, or some other choice he couldn't remember, had created a branch point, a moment where his timeline had split, and for 45 minutes he had been somehow overlapping with his duplicate in the other timeline. Raymond still drives, still uses the handle Night Rider, still hauls cargo across the country. But he listens to his CB differently now, always alert for his own voice coming back to him from another timeline. And sometimes, late at night on empty highways, he sees a truck in his mirrors that looks exactly like his, pacing him at impossible distances, there for a moment and then gone. He doesn't panic anymore. He just keys his microphone and says, "Hello, other me, drive safe." And sometimes, just sometimes, he hears his own voice respond from somewhere else. "You too, brother, you too." Story 9, The Fuel Stop. Calvin C.J. Johnson had been driving tanker trucks for 19 years, specializing in fuel delivery across the southeastern United States. At 46, he was experienced with the unique challenges of hauling flammable liquids, the weight distribution, the surge dynamics, the strict safety protocols. His 2017 Mack Anthem was configured specifically for tanker work, with all the necessary safety equipment and certifications. On March 28, 2022, CJ was hauling 8,500 gallons of diesel fuel from a refinery in Texas to distribution centers in Florida. The route was familiar, Interstate 10 across Louisiana and into Florida. But when his fuel gauge began showing empty despite having filled up less than an hour earlier, CJ pulled into a truck stop that existed in a space between normal commerce and something far stranger, a place where transactions involved more than just money and fuel. The evening was humid and warm, typical for late March in southern Louisiana. CJ had fueled up at a major truck stop near Lake Charles around 6 p.m., topping off his tanks to ensure he could make it to his overnight stop in Mobile without needing to refuel. His truck held 200 gallons of diesel, and his fuel economy was consistent at around 6.5 miles per gallon. With full tanks, he should have been able to travel at least 1,300 miles. Mobile was only 350 miles away. Fuel should not have been an issue. But around 7:30 p.m., about 70 miles east of Lake Charles, CJ's low fuel warning light illuminated. He stared at it in disbelief. That wasn't possible. He had only driven for 90 minutes, maybe 80 miles. His fuel gauge showed less than a quarter tank, dropping toward empty as he watched. CJ immediately started looking for a fuel stop. This section of I-10 ran through the Atchafalaya Basin, basically a massive swamp with limited services. But his GPS showed a truck stop about 5 miles ahead, right off exit 127. As CJ approached the exit, he noticed the truck stop in the distance, illuminated with bright lights that seemed too intense for a rural Louisiana location. The sign read, "Last Chance Fuel, All Trucks Welcome." CJ took the exit and pulled into the facility, which was larger than he expected, with multiple lanes of fuel pumps, a large main building, and a parking area. But something felt off immediately. The place was too clean, too new looking for a truck stop in the middle of nowhere, and there were no other vehicles anywhere, despite the facility being large enough to accommodate dozens of trucks. CJ pulled up to a diesel pump island, shut down his engine, and climbed out. The air smelled wrong, not the usual combination of diesel fumes, swamp, and truck stop food that he expected in this area. Instead, it smelled clean, almost sterile, with a faint chemical undertone he couldn't identify. He swiped his fuel card at the pump. The card reader beeped but didn't display the usual prompts. Instead, the screen showed text, "Card declined. Alternative payment required. See attendant." CJ frowned and walked toward the main building. As he got closer, he could see through the large windows that the interior was well lit and appeared to be stocked like a normal convenience store. But still no people visible. He pushed through the door, which opened smoothly and silently, and found himself in a space that looked like a truck stop but felt deeply wrong. The aisles were stocked with products, but CJ didn't recognize most of the brands. The labels were in English, but the company names were unfamiliar. Nutri Drive, Hydromax, Endura Fuel. The packaging design looked simultaneously too modern and somehow dated, like predictions of future products from a 1980s science fiction movie. "Hello," CJ called out. "Anyone here? I need to pay for fuel." A door behind the counter opened and a man emerged. He was middle-aged, wearing a clean uniform shirt with a name tag that read manager. But his eyes were wrong, too reflective, catching the fluorescent lights in a way human eyes shouldn't. "Welcome to Last Chance Fuel," the man said, his voice pleasant but oddly flat. "How can I assist you?" "My card was declined," CJ explained. "Said I need alternative payment. I've got cash if your card system is down." The manager smiled, but the smile didn't reach those strange eyes. "Our card systems work perfectly, but they require compatible cards. Your card is not compatible with our network. We do accept alternative payments, however. Quite flexible, really." CJ pulled out his wallet, extracting several $20 bills. "How much for a fill-up? My tanks are nearly empty." The manager didn't look at the cash. "We don't accept that currency here. It's not valid for our transactions. We require something more substantial." CJ stared at him. What are you talking about? This is U.S. currency. Legal tender, what else would you want? The manager leaned forward on the counter, his reflective eyes fixed on CJ. We deal in time, memories, experiences, things of actual value, not paper that represents abstract value. You need fuel, we have fuel, but the payment is different here. CJ backed away a step, his hand instinctively moving toward his pocket where he kept a folding knife. This is insane, I'm leaving, I'll find another station. Your truck has no fuel, the manager said calmly. You noticed your gauge dropping impossibly fast. That wasn't a leak, that was us. We drew your fuel away, pulled it through space to here because we identified you as someone who might be willing to make a transaction. You can't leave without fuel. The nearest station with fuel you can actually use is 90 miles away. You won't make it. You'll be stranded on I-10 in the dark, hauling flammable cargo with no power. Very dangerous situation. CJ felt fear and anger mixing in his chest. You stole my fuel. That's theft. I'm calling the police. He pulled out his cell phone, but the screen showed no signal. The manager watched patiently as CJ tried to make the call, then said, Communication doesn't work from here. We're isolated. Now let's discuss payment. I'm not unreasonable. The fuel you need, approximately 150 gallons to fill your tanks, requires a specific payment. We'll take a memory, nothing essential, just something small. Maybe a childhood birthday party, or your first day at school, something you won't really miss. CJ shook his head violently. You can't take memories, that's not how anything works. Memories are in my brain, you can't just extract them. The manager tilted his head. We absolutely can. We've been doing it for quite some time. The human brain stores memories as patterns of neural connections. We simply copy those patterns, extract them, and store them in our collection. You won't remember the memory afterward, but you won't remember forgetting it either. Most people never even notice. They just have vague sense that something is missing, but they can't identify what. CJ tried to think of alternatives. He could abandon his truck and walk back to the interstate, try to flag down another vehicle. But he was hauling 8,500 gallons of diesel fuel. He couldn't just leave it unattended in an unsecured location. Company protocol, insurance requirements, and safety regulations all forbade it. Plus, if what the manager said was true about his fuel being drained, his truck was already non-functional. What if I refuse? CJ asked. The manager shrugged. Then you remain here, we're patient. Eventually, everyone accepts our terms. Hunger, thirst, boredom, fear, these things motivate acceptance, but I'd prefer you accept willingly. Less complicated that way. CJ looked around desperately, searching for some option, some escape. The store had windows, but when he looked through them at the parking lot, something was wrong with the view. The lights outside seemed to pulse slightly, and the pavement had a strange shimmering quality, like heat distortion but in the wrong direction. How do I know you'll actually give me fuel if I agree? CJ demanded. The manager opened a drawer behind the counter and pulled out a thick binder, opening it to reveal pages of what looked like contracts. We've been operating here for a very long time. We have thousands of satisfied customers. Well, satisfied in the sense that they received fuel and left. They don't remember being satisfied since we took their memories, but the transactions were completed successfully. CJ made a decision. He turned and ran for the door, slamming through it and sprinting toward his truck. If he could get in the cab, lock the doors, maybe he could figure something out. But as he ran across the parking lot, the distance to his truck seemed to stretch, the truck getting farther away instead of closer despite his running. He ran for what felt like minutes, gasping for breath, but the truck remained distant, unreachable. Finally, exhausted, he stopped. When he turned around, the store entrance was right behind him, the manager standing in the doorway watching calmly. Space doesn't work normally here, the manager said. You can't leave by running. You can only leave by accepting our terms or by choosing to stay permanently. Those are your options. CJ bent over, hands on his knees, trying to catch his breath and think. He was trapped. genuinely trapped in this impossible place by forces he didn't understand. "What memory would you take?" he asked finally. The manager consulted a small device that looked like a smartphone but with a screen that showed swirling colors. "Let me see what you have available. Ah, here's a good one. Your 8th birthday. You remember it, yes. Your parents threw you a party. There was a cake, some friends from school, nothing traumatic, nothing essential to your identity, just a pleasant afternoon from decades ago. We'll take that. In exchange, 150 gallons of diesel fuel, your tanks filled, and safe passage back to I-10. Deal." CJ thought about his 8th birthday. He could remember it vaguely. His mom had made a chocolate cake. There had been balloons. Some kids from his 2nd grade class had come over. They had played in the backyard. It was a nice memory but not crucial. He had hundreds of memories from childhood. Losing one wouldn't fundamentally change who he was, would it? "If I agree, how do you extract it?" CJ asked. The manager stepped forward, holding up the device. "You simply hold this and think about the memory, replay it in your mind as vividly as possible. The device will copy the neural patterns and then erase the original from your brain. Takes about 30 seconds, completely painless." CJ stared at the device. Every instinct screamed that this was wrong, that he should resist, fight, refuse. But he was trapped and he needed fuel to continue his job, to deliver his cargo, to get home to his family. One childhood birthday party weighed against his livelihood, his safety, his ability to leave this nightmare place. "Fine," CJ said quietly. "Take it. Give me the fuel and let me leave." The manager handed him the device, which was warm and vibrated slightly in CJ's hand. "Think about your 8th birthday. Remember it as clearly as you can." CJ closed his eyes and forced himself to think about that day. He pulled up the images: his mom in the kitchen, the chocolate cake with 8 candles, his friends running around the backyard, opening presents in the living room. The device grew warmer in his hand, vibrating more intensely. Then there was a sensation like something being pulled out of his head, not painful but deeply uncomfortable, a feeling of loss. The device beeped. The manager took it from CJ's hand. "Transaction complete. Your fuel tanks are now full. You may return to your vehicle and continue your journey. The entrance to I-10 eastbound is through the exit you came from. Drive safely." CJ felt dizzy, disoriented. He tried to think about his 8th birthday. Nothing. The memory was completely gone, not fuzzy or faded, but entirely absent, like it had never existed. He knew intellectually that he must have had an 8th birthday. Everyone did, but he couldn't remember a single detail about it. He stumbled to his truck, climbed into the cab, and checked his fuel gauge. Full tanks, exactly as promised. He started the engine, which turned over smoothly, and drove toward the exit. As he pulled onto the ramp back to I-10, he glanced in his mirrors. The last chance fuel truck stop was gone. Just empty swampland where it had been seconds before. No lights, no building, no sign it had ever existed. CJ continued his drive to Mobile, then to Florida, delivered his cargo, and returned to Texas. But he was haunted by the transaction. He tried researching the truck stop, looking for exit 127 on I-10 in Louisiana. The exit existed, but there was no truck stop there, had never been a truck stop there according to records. He tried talking to other drivers about unusual fuel stops in Louisiana. A few drivers told strange stories, mentioned places that didn't quite make sense, but nobody had an experience quite like his. The missing memory bothered him more than he expected. He talked to his mom about his 8th birthday. She remembered it clearly, described it in detail, showed him photos. But CJ had no memory of any of it. The photos showed a boy who was definitely him, smiling and laughing, but it felt like looking at a stranger. That piece of his childhood was simply gone, traded for diesel fuel to a place that existed outside normal reality. CJ still drives tanker trucks, still hauls fuel across the Southeast, but he's obsessive about maintaining full tanks now, never letting his fuel drop below half, always filling up at major truck stops in populated areas. He avoids small, isolated fuel stops, especially ones he doesn't recognize. And sometimes, late at night when he's driving through Louisiana, he sees lights in the distance that seem too bright, too clean, and he pushes harder on the accelerator, making sure he has enough fuel to pass by whatever might be calling to him from the darkness. Because he learned that some things in this world operate on transactions that have nothing to do with money, places that trade in pieces of human experience, taking small bits of who you are in exchange for the resources you need. And once you've traded a piece of yourself, you can never get it back. It's gone forever, held in collections you'll never see by entities you'll never understand, payment for services rendered on roads between here and somewhere else. Story 10. The Passenger. Elena Martinez had been driving regional routes for 11 years, specializing in medical supply deliveries throughout the Pacific Northwest. At 39, she was efficient, punctual, and preferred solo driving to team operations. Her 2019 International LT Series was equipped with advanced safety features and was meticulously maintained. She had a reputation for being no-nonsense, professional, and completely reliable. On October 15, 2020, driving south from Seattle to Portland with a load of hospital equipment, Elena picked up a passenger she couldn't refuse, couldn't escape from, and couldn't explain. A passenger who shouldn't exist but who taught her something about the nature of roads, destinations, and the debts we carry with us whether we acknowledge them or not. The night was rainy, typical for October in the Pacific Northwest. Elena left Seattle at 8 p.m., planning to arrive in Portland by 11 p.m. for an early morning delivery. Interstate 5 South was moderately busy, steady traffic but flowing well. Rain was heavy but manageable, her wipers maintaining clear visibility. Around 9 p.m. between Olympia and Centralia, Elena saw a figure standing on the shoulder, partially illuminated by her headlights. A woman, soaking wet, waving desperately for help. Elena's first instinct was to keep driving. Company policy said no hitchhikers, no exceptions. But the woman looked desperate and the weather was genuinely dangerous. Hypothermia was a real risk. Elena slowed down, fighting against her professional training, and pulled onto the shoulder about 20 yards past the woman. She kept her engine running, doors locked, and watched in her mirror as the woman ran toward the truck. The woman reached the passenger door and looked up at Elena through the window. She was young, maybe late 20s, with dark hair plastered to her face by rain. She was wearing jeans and a light jacket, completely inadequate for the weather. She shouted over the sound of rain and traffic, "Please, my car broke down. I need to get to Portland. Please help me." Elena hesitated, then made a decision she would regret for the rest of her life. She unlocked the passenger door. The woman climbed in, bringing cold air and rain with her. "Thank you so much," she gasped, shivering violently. "I've been out there for over an hour. Nobody would stop. Thank you." Elena grabbed a blanket from behind the seat and handed it to the woman. "What happened to your car?" The woman wrapped the blanket around herself. "It just died. No warning. I'm not good with cars. I tried calling for help, but my phone is dead. I need to get to Portland tonight. It's an emergency. Can you take me?" Elena studied the woman carefully. She seemed genuinely distressed, cold and scared, but not threatening. "I can take you as far as Portland. I'm delivering to a hospital there, but I need to see some ID first. Company policy." The woman fumbled in her jacket pocket and pulled out a driver's license, handing it to Elena. The license looked legitimate. Washington State, name Jennifer Hayes, address in Seattle, birth date making her 28 years old. The photo matched the woman sitting in the passenger seat. Elena handed back the license and pulled back onto I-5, accelerating to merge with traffic. "So what's the emergency in Portland?" The woman was quiet for a moment, then said, "My sister is in the hospital. She was in an accident. They said I need to come right away. She's not going to make it." Her voice broke on the last word and she started crying softly. Elena felt sympathy but also wariness. Something about the situation felt off, though she couldn't identify what. "I'm sorry about your sister. Which hospital?" The woman wiped her eyes. "Providence Portland Medical Center." "Do you know where that is?" Alina nodded. "I know it. I'm actually delivering to a different hospital, but I can drop you at Providence. It's not far out of my way." They drove in silence for a while, the woman wrapped in the blanket, shivering occasionally. Alina kept glancing at her, trying to figure out what was triggering her unease. Then she noticed something strange. The woman wasn't dripping. Despite having been standing in heavy rain for over an hour, according to her story, despite having been soaking wet when she climbed into the truck, the woman was now completely dry. Her hair, her clothes, everything dry. And the passenger seat wasn't wet either, despite the woman having sat down while drenched. Alina's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "Jennifer, right?" The woman looked over at her. "Yes." Alina tried to keep her voice casual. "How long were you standing out there before I picked you up?" The woman thought for a moment. "Maybe an hour and a half. I'm not sure. I lost track of time. It felt like forever." Alina nodded slowly. "Must have been cold." The woman pulled the blanket tighter. "Freezing. I thought I might die out there. Thank you again for stopping." Alina glanced at her again. The woman looked perfectly dry, perfectly normal, but Alina knew what she had seen. The woman had been soaking wet 30 minutes ago. Physics didn't allow for that kind of drying time, not without a heat source, not in the cool, damp air of the truck cab. "Jennifer, this might sound like a strange question, but are you actually here?" Alina asked carefully. The woman turned to look at her, and her expression shifted from gratitude to something else, something sad and resigned. "You noticed," she said quietly. "Most people don't. Most people just give me a ride and drop me off and never realize anything was wrong." Alina's heart began to race. "Noticed what? What are you?" The woman sighed. "I'm not alive, if that's what you're asking. I died 3 years ago. October 15th, 2017, right on this stretch of highway. My car broke down in the rain. I was trying to get to Portland to see my sister in the hospital. She had been in a car accident. I stood on the shoulder waving for help for over 2 hours. Hundreds of cars passed. Nobody stopped. Eventually, I got hypothermia. I collapsed on the shoulder. They found my body 2 days later." Alina wanted to pull over, wanted to tell the woman to get out, wanted to scream. But she forced herself to stay calm, to keep driving. "If you died, how are you in my truck?" The woman looked out the window at the rain. "I'm trapped." Repeating the same night over and over. "Every year on October 15th, I appear on the shoulder of I-5 at the spot where I broke down. I wave for help. Sometimes someone stops. Sometimes nobody does. When someone picks me up, I ride with them to Portland. I go to the hospital to see my sister, and then at midnight I reset. I'm back on the shoulder again, starting over." Alina checked the dashboard clock. It was 9:47 p.m. "What happens at midnight?" The woman's voice was barely a whisper. "I disappear. Wherever I am, whatever I'm doing, I just cease to exist at midnight, and I return to the shoulder to start again. I've done this loop hundreds of times now. 3 years, every October 15th. Alina tried to process this rationally. Maybe the woman was mentally ill, delusional. Maybe this was an elaborate scam. But the evidence was undeniable. The woman had been soaking wet and was now dry. The passenger seat hadn't gotten wet despite a drenched person sitting on it. And Alina had that deep, instinctual certainty that she was experiencing something beyond normal reality. "Why are you trapped?" Alina asked. "What's keeping you in this loop?" The woman turned back to look at her, and her eyes were infinite with sadness. "Guilt maybe, anger, unfinished business. I don't really know. I just know I have to keep trying to get to Portland, to get to the hospital to see my sister. Even though I know she died that night, even though I know I'll never actually make it there in time, I have to keep trying." Alina made a decision. "I'll get you there, before midnight. We'll make it to Providence, Portland. You'll see your sister, or at least see the hospital. Maybe that will break the loop." The woman shook her head. "Others have tried. I've been to the hospital dozens of times. It doesn't change anything. At midnight I reset." "But they didn't really care," Alina said firmly. "They just gave you a ride because you asked. I'm going to actively help you. Maybe that's the difference. Maybe what you needed all along wasn't just a ride, but for someone to genuinely care about getting you there. The woman's eyes filled with tears. Why would you do that? You don't know me. You don't owe me anything. Alina thought about her own life. 11 years of driving, of keeping to herself, of following protocols and maintaining professional distance. She had never let passengers in her truck, had never bent the rules, had never allowed emotional connection to interfere with her job. Maybe that was the point. Maybe she needed to learn the same lesson Jennifer needed to learn, that compassion mattered more than protocol, that human connection was worth the risk. Because someone should have stopped for you 3 years ago, Alina said. Because you deserved help and you didn't get it, and that's wrong. I can't change the past, but I can make sure you get to Portland tonight. Alina pressed harder on the accelerator, pushing her truck to the upper limits of safe driving in the rain. She checked her GPS. They were about 90 miles from Portland. It was 9:52 p.m. She had just over 2 hours to get Jennifer to the hospital before midnight. Traffic cooperated, thinning out as they drove south. Alina navigated efficiently, taking the fastest lanes, optimizing her route. Jennifer sat quietly, watching the rain, occasionally glancing at Alina with an expression of hope mixed with resignation. They made good time, reaching the Portland metro area by 11:15 p.m. Alina exited I-5 and navigated city streets toward Providence Portland Medical Center. At 11:35 p.m., she pulled into the hospital's emergency entrance. "We're here," Alina said. "You've got 25 minutes before midnight. Go see your sister." Jennifer looked at the hospital, then back at Alina. "She won't be there. She died 3 years ago. There's no point." Alina reached over and squeezed Jennifer's hand. Her hand was ice cold, far colder than any living person should be. "Then go say goodbye. Go stand in the place you were trying to reach. Make it to your destination. Maybe that's what breaks the loop, not getting there in time, but finally getting there at all." Jennifer opened the passenger door and stepped out. She looked back at Alina one more time. "Thank you. Whatever happens, thank you for caring." Then she ran toward the hospital entrance, disappearing through the sliding glass doors. Alina sat in her truck, watching the entrance, checking the dashboard clock obsessively. 11:37 p.m., 11:42 p.m., 11:51 p.m. At 11:58 p.m., Alina saw Jennifer emerge from the hospital. She walked slowly back toward the truck and Alina rolled down her window. "Did you find what you needed?" Alina called. Jennifer nodded. "I went to the ICU. The nurses asked if they could help me. I told them I was looking for my sister, Jennifer Hayes, who was admitted October 15, 2017. They checked the records. They told me what I already knew, that she died that night at 11:43 p.m., that her sister Melissa had been trying to reach her, that Melissa never got to say goodbye. But I got to see the room. I got to stand in the space where she was. I made it. I finally made it." Tears were rolling down Jennifer's face.